Chapter 216. Her gaze fell on the middle-aged man called Xiang Hua. His clothes were tattered, his hair was messy, and his beard was unkempt. He looked like a homeless man. She sized him up and found that his cultivation was indeed only at the spirit master level. However, listening to the evil cultivators, it seemed that his original strength was not only that. Tianyuan Palace? She really did not expect to meet people from the Tianyuan Palace in such a place. There were 7 or 8 evil cultivators, and 3 of them were at the second stage of the Great Spirit Master level. She was curious whether Xiang Hua could survive. At this moment, the leader of the evil cultivators shouted, and the other evil cultivators instantly attacked Xiang Hua. The sharp sword in their hands emitted a strong aura of spiritual energy, which spread out in the surroundings. Sword chi whistled through the air, leaving sword marks on the ground. Fengju leaned behind a tree and watched. She found that Xiang Hua's strength was very solid. Although he was only at the spirit master level, he was not careless in dealing with the evil cultivators. His attacks were ruthless and accurate. Almost every evil cultivator of the same level would be killed within 3 moves. In the end, when he was surrounded by the 3 second stage Great Spirit Master evil cultivators, he gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Hiss! Xiang Hua's arm was cut by the enemy's sharp sword. Blood gushed out and dyed his sleeve. He did not have a long sword in his hand, so he could not resist the attacks of the Great Spirit Master evil cultivators. He could only retreat step by step until he picked up a long sword from the ground to meet them. However, his strength was there, and the enemy was 3 against 1. After a long battle, there was no doubt that he would lose. Looking at Xiang Hua, who was hit by a sword on the left and a blade on the right, Fengzhou's eyes flashed and she pondered. She was not familiar with the people from the Tianyuan Palace. She did not know what kind of people they were. Was he really an unpardonable villain? However, when she recalled her master's words, she sighed helplessly in her heart. When she saw the 3 evil cultivators' hands slashing towards Xiang Hua, she moved her fingers slightly and 3 silver needles containing hidden strength shot out from her fingers. The 3 of them let out a muffled groan as their bodies instantly froze. They raised their swords and were about to slash down, but they were unable to do so. They only felt a numbing sensation spreading through their bodies, making them unable to exert any strength. In the next moment, the swords in their hands also fell to the ground. Seeing this, Xiang Hua narrowed his eyes and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. The sword in his hand instantly slashed across the throats of the 3 people, causing blood to spurt out. After killing those heretical cultivators, Xiang Hua looked at the red figure leaning against the tree. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you." Then he turned and left. Seeing this, Fengzhu raised his eyebrows. "Wait." Xiang Hua frowned and looked sternly at Fengzhu, asking silently, "You're the left protector of the heavenly Yuan Palace? Not bad. You're a villain?" Hearing this, he sneered. "Villain? How many decent people hadn't killed before? Some of them are even worse than us." Fengzhu nodded in agreement and asked, "How did you get in?" She was curious. Xiang Hua clenched his fists. "It's none of your business. Anyway, I saved your life." She crossed her arms and leaned against the tree branch lazily. He was silent for a while before saying, "You were betrayed for a foundation-building pill? Tisk, I didn't know you were so valuable." Chapter 217. Xiang Hua's face darkened as he glanced at Fengzhu and walked away. This time, Fengzhu didn't call out to him but watched him walk away. Not long later, he disappeared into the forest. Xiaoju? Fatty had been waiting there for a long time, and hearing that there wasn't any movement, he came over to take a look. When he saw the few corpses of the evil cultivators on the ground, he was slightly stunned. "You killed them?" "No, the person who killed them has left." Fengzhu shrugged and said. Seeing an evil cultivator's robe puffed up, she couldn't help but go forward to take a look. What was hidden in his arms was not anything else but an egg slightly bigger than a fist. "What egg is this? There are patterns on it?" She looked at it but couldn't make out anything. Fatty took a look and said, "This is a magical beast egg." Actually, why would there be a magical beast egg? Just at this moment, a rustling sound was heard. Both of them looked around, and when their gazes landed on a huge python which was about 6 meters long, Fengjiu's face was filled with astonishment and seriousness. Hiss! This is a 7th-tier giant python. Quickly run. Once his voice fell, he broke into a run. But after running for 20 meters, he saw that Fatty was still standing there hugging the egg. He couldn't help but shouted, "Fatty, quickly run. Run, run. I can't run." Hearing his sobbing voice, Fengjiu then noticed that his body was trembling. That pair of legs were shaking as he stood there watching that giant python scurrying forward. Damn it, she cursed softly. She thought that this fellow was very daring. Who knew that when he saw a 7th-tier giant python, he was so frightened that he kept trembling and couldn't even run. Seeing that giant python pouncing towards him with its mouth wide open, she gritted her teeth and mobilized the profound energy in her body, dashed forward and dragged him away. Hiss, hiss, hiss. However, that was a 7th-tier giant python. Its speed and ability was equivalent to a golden core cultivator. If Fengjiu was alone, it would still be fine. But she had to drag Fatty along, so her speed was naturally greatly reduced. Woo! It's catching up. Fatty shouted in fear. Every time the python slithered forward, it would open its mouth and bite him. Every time, it would almost bite him. He was so frightened that his body went limp and cold sweat broke out. If it wasn't for Fengjiu pulling his collar and dragging him along, he would have probably become the giant python's snack. Bang! Bang bang! Hiss! Hiss! The serpent's body slammed into the ground, creating loud banging sounds. The ground shook from the impact. The moment the oppressive aura of a Class 7 demonic beast was released, some of the lower-ranked demonic beasts in the vicinity fled. Even the faces of some of the sect disciples and Star Cloud Academy members who heard the commotion changed drastically. With such a commotion, could it be that Class 7 Sacred Emperor Python? Damn it! Who was it that provoked that 7th Order Sage Emperor Python? That was a 7th-tier demonic beast with strength comparable to a Jindan cultivator. Isn't that courting death? Those who heard the commotion all ran away, afraid that they would bump into that Class 7 Sacred Emperor Python. On the other side, Fengjiu and Fatty, who were being chased by the Sacred Emperor Python, were not in a good situation. Rip. The sound of clothes being torn was heard. A large piece of cloth was torn from her buttocks, revealing a white patch. He was so shocked that his heart tightened. He swallowed his saliva and shouted in a trembling voice, "Xiaojiao, 9th brother, 9th master, quick, quick run." Chapter 218. Fengjiu was also exhausted from dragging him along. As he ran, he shouted, "Fatty, quickly throw the egg back to the python. Hurry." The python kept chasing after them, so it was obvious that the problem was with the egg in Fatty's hand. Oh, okay. Fatty hurriedly responded and threw the egg in his hand at the python that was chasing after them. "Here you go." But in the next moment, he was dumbfounded. Fengjiu heard a cracking sound and turned around in shock. He saw the egg fall to the ground and shatter into pieces. The unformed snake egg had turned into a yellow and white omelet. Fatty, you bastard. They saw the giant python's body stiffen at that moment. It lowered its head and sniffed. Then, it suddenly raised its head. Its vicious and ferocious snake eyes were suddenly dyed with blood red. With a hiss, it chased after them. Its speed was several times faster than before. I didn't do it on purpose." Fatty was in a terrible state. When the python opened its mouth to bite, he had to tense his body to prevent himself from being swallowed. Knowing that running like this was not a solution, Fengjiu gritted his teeth and used the momentum to throw Fatty out. "Hurry up and run." Fatty only felt a gust of wind blow him away, and in an instant, he flew more than 10 meters away. He didn't stop once he landed on the ground and started running. He didn't even look back as he shouted, "Little Nine, quick run." Fengjiu's gaze fell on the big tree in front of them. Without Fatty, her speed was much faster. Thus, as she ran forward, she stepped on the tree trunk and flipped backward, pouncing on the giant python that was chasing after Fatty. She descended from the sky and rode on the slippery body of the giant python. She pulled out the dagger in her boot and stabbed it fiercely. Hiss, hiss, hiss. The giant python's eyes were bloodshot with a ferocious glint. It swung its body vigorously and twisted its thick body to wrap around Feng Jiu in an instant. Feng Jiu saw the snake's tail wrap around her. She was about to jump away, but the snake's body swayed and slipped. Her body was tightly wrapped around by the snake's body. The 6-meter-long giant python was terrifyingly strong. When it tightened its body, Feng Jiu lost all ability to move. All the bones in her body were compressed, as if they were about to be forcefully crushed. The suffocating feeling and the helpless aura of death made her realize once again that she was still too weak. Xiaojiu, Fatty, who had already escaped, ran back. He gathered flames in his hands and attacked the giant python. When the giant python saw him, it looked as if it had seen its father's murderer. Its blood-red eyes were filled with viciousness as it opened its mouth and pounced at him. Feng Jiu was constricted to the point that she was a little confused. She could only feel cold sweat dripping down her forehead. However, when she heard the fatty's voice, she saw that he was trying to attract the attention of the giant python. Seeing this, she calmed herself down. Her hands and feet were tied and she couldn't move, so she opened her mouth and bit the snake's body directly. She bit it hard and felt a warm and fishy snake blood rush into her mouth. She swallowed it directly and bit it tightly. Hiss! The giant python hissed in pain and tightened its body, trying to strangle her. However, the pain and blood in its body increased. It could only hiss angrily and fling Feng Jiu away with its tail. Chapter 219. The snake raised its head and hissed as the dagger pierced through its body. The snake twitched a few times before it lay motionless on the ground, allowing the snake's blood to spread all over the ground. Phew! Feng Jiu exhaled lightly and felt as if all the strength in her body had disappeared as she fell onto the snake's body. This giant python was a 7th-level magical beast and its skin was thick and tough. Because she wanted to kill it in one move, she used almost all of her Xin Qi to pierce through the snake's skin and hit its fatal spot. After this battle, she clearly understood how terrifying a golden core adept's strength was. She could only kill this 7th-level giant python by luck. If she were to fight with a golden core adept, then even surviving would be a problem. Dead. Fatty fell onto the ground after being sprayed by the giant python's blood. Looking at the dead giant python, he couldn't help but pat his chest and said with lingering fear, "Oh my God, I never thought that I could be so brave. A 7th-level magical beast. I actually ran back." At this moment, Feng Jiu, who had rested for a while, had already dug out a beast crystal from the giant python's stomach. She took the beast crystal and looked at it. Seeing that it was a wind attribute beast crystal, she kept it first. Different magical beasts had different attributes, and their beast crystals could be used for cultivators of different attributes to cultivate and increase their strength. Hence, they were very precious. Xiaojiu, do you know how much experience a 7th-level magical beast is worth? Fatty swallowed his saliva and looked at the 6-meter-long giant python on the ground. How much? Feng Jiu asked. 8,000. A whole 1,000. That is a 7th-level magical beast equivalent to a golden core adept. It is said that there is only one giant python here. My master even specially instructed us to run away if we meet one. I didn't think that you would be able to kill it. Saying this, his eyes were filled with worship as he looked at her. Feng Jiu shook her head. I was just lucky. I was almost strangled to death by it. Let's bring this giant python out. This meat is from a 7th-level magical beast and is very nourishing for cultivators. Also, this python's skin can be sold at a high price. It is said that it can be used to refine weapons. She nodded. Just now, this giant python had caused such a huge commotion. The cultivators nearby should have known. At this moment, it was best to keep the giant python and quickly leave. Otherwise, if they attracted the attention of those people, they would be greedy and a fierce battle would be inevitable. Thus, after Feng Jiu kept the giant python in her space, she looked at her blood-stained red clothes and frowned. I know of water nearby. Near here, I'll bring you there. Fatty reached out and put his hand on Feng Jiu's shoulder as if they were good brothers. However, when he saw Feng Jiu staring at his hand, he couldn't help but retract his hand in embarrassment. That, I, he said, he. But when Feng Jiu saw that his pants were torn by the giant python and revealed his white flesh, the corner of his mouth twitched. He looked away and thought to himself, there is no beauty to speak of. In her mind, she inexplicably thought of the Yama Lord's tight and perky buttocks, as well as his hot and sexy figure. Just thinking about it made her ears tingle. She cursed inwardly, why am I thinking of him? Chapter 220. In the training forest, Fatty brought Fengjiu to the water source. In fact, it was just a small stream in the shrubbery. Xiaojiu, this is the place. We can just take a bath here and change our clothes, Fatty said and began to take off his clothes. Seeing this, Fengjiu looked away and said, then you can take a bath here. I'll go upstream. With that, he walked upstream. Fatty was stunned for a moment. You're going upstream? Isn't that the bathwater that I have to wash you? I'm not washing. I'm just going to wash my face and change my clothes, Fengjiu said and turned around to glance at him, saying, you're not allowed to follow me? All right. Although he was confused, he did not follow him. Instead, he returned to the stream and quickly washed up. After all, it was not safe to stay in a place like this. Fengjiu sensed the surrounding aura. After confirming that there was no one around, he took off his blood-stained red clothes and changed into a clean set of clothes. He then went to the stream and scooped up some water to wash his face. He cleaned off the ointment on his face and revealed his original appearance. Using the clear water mirror, he could see the reflection of his beautiful face in the water. His snow-white skin was sparkling and translucent with a moving luster. The scars on his face had all disappeared without a trace. What appeared was a face so perfect that it could take one's breath away. The person in the water mirror smiled faintly. Her smile was 3 parts demonic and 7 parts wanton. Contrasted with her serene eyes, she gave off a noble aura that stood out from the rest. Although Su Ruoyan had Feng Qingge's face, she was not her. Even if her face was similar, her demeanor and temperament were different. Fengjiu was different. This face did not look out of place at all, because in her previous life, this was her original appearance. She could not be more familiar with this face. After changing into a clean set of red clothes and washing her face, she felt like a new person. Even her mood was lifted. She took out a water bag from her space and filled it with water. Just then, she heard Fatty's voice behind her. Xiaojiu, are you done? All right. She responded and put the water bag into the space. She stood up and turned to look at the Fatty. Let's go. At this time, when the Fatty saw her, he couldn't help but widen his eyes. His face was full of astonishment. You are little Nine? How did she change her clothes and wash her face, as if she was a different person? Are you stunned by my beauty? Ha ha ha. Fengjiu laughed, looked at him and joked. I'm just so handsome. You don't have to be jealous. You can't be jealous. Hearing this, the Fatty heaved a sigh of relief and patted his chest. You scared me to death. I thought you were a girl. Fengjiu smiled embarrassedly and touched his face narcissistically. Yes, many people who see my face say so. As soon as she finished speaking, she looked at Fatty and pondered for a while before asking, I have enough experience points, so I can leave by crushing the jade token. What about you? What are you going to do? You want to leave this place? Yes, I still have things to do. I can't stay here for too long. She nodded. Chapter 221. Seeing this, Fengjiu patted him on the shoulder and said, Take care. We'll meet again. You too. Fatty grinned and said, Xiaojiu, nice to meet you. Take this, you might need it. She smiled at him and threw a bottle of medicine to him. What's this? Fatty asked curiously and opened it to take a look. At the same time, Fengjiu had already crushed the white jade tablet, and a ray of light shot out from the jade tablet and sent her out. Fatty was left holding the bottle of medicine in his hands excitedly and opened his eyes wide in disbelief. Hiss! It's actually a level 3 medicine. At this moment, after a flash of light, Feng Jie's figure also appeared in an open space. When she stood still, several elders surrounded her and stared at her, sizing her up. "Which sect's disciple are you from?" The 4 elders came from 3 different sects in the School of Stars and Clouds. When they saw that the disciple holding the jade tablet gained 1,000 experience points, they knew that he must have encountered the level 7 giant python inside. However, the disciples of the various sects who went in to train were not strong enough to deal with the level 7 giant python. Then, who killed the giant python? With doubts in their hearts, they waited here. Finally, after that person crushed the jade tablet and was sent out, they saw an unfamiliar red-clothed young man. When they first saw this young man, even the elders couldn't help but secretly praise him. What an outstanding young man! Evil and flamboyant aura, as if he was born with a noble temperament, and that handsome face with a trace of evil. This kind of person, even in their sects and schools, was extremely rare. Seeing the 4 elders staring at her and sizing her up, Feng Jie smiled and said, "I accidentally entered." The 3 sects and the teachers of the School of Stars and Clouds were all here. Naturally, she couldn't pretend to be one of them. Accidentally entered? The 4 elders frowned and said resolutely, "That's impossible." The training ground was not only surrounded by formations, but also a barrier. Looking at this young man, who was only a spirit master, how could he accidentally enter? "Why is it impossible? Didn't I come out from there?" Feng Jie said, and was about to walk away. However, after taking 2 steps, his expression changed slightly and he broke out in cold sweat. The elders wanted to stop him, but they saw that the young man was acting strangely. The 4 of them looked at each other. In the end, it was the elder from Star Cloud who asked, "What's wrong with you?" The powerful aura that surged through her body caused her face to turn even paler. The aura that was rampaging through her meridians made her want to curse out loud. Damn it! It must be the blood of the Type 7 giant python. At that moment, he didn't care about anything else and quickly sat down cross-legged to adjust the chaotic aura in his body. The 4 old men saw a strong aura surging from Shi Yan's body. His face turned pale and red. The old man from Star Cloud stroked his beard and said as if he understood something, "The aura from him is mixed with the blood chi of the giant python. The aura in his body is surging. He must have drunk the giant python's blood." "What? Drank the blood of a rank 7 giant python? That's impossible, right? Even if a Foundation establishment cultivator drank the blood of a rank 7 giant python, their body would explode and they would die. This young man is only a cultivator who just became a spirit master. If he really drank the blood of a rank 7 magical beast, his body would have exploded and he would have died." Chapter 222. The old man from the academy didn't say anything. He only stroked his beard and looked at the red-clothed youth sitting cross-legged. His wise eyes seemed to be pondering about something. Feng Jie, who was sitting cross-legged, guided the chaotic aura in her body to her dantian. The aura was fierce and strong, causing her veins to swell as if they were about to explode. The veins under her skin swelled, occasionally appearing and protruding. She was sweating all over, and her face was sometimes white and sometimes red. The pain that came from her body almost made her faint. However, she knew that if she couldn't hold on, she would be done for. The 4 old men surrounded her and watched. One of them said in disbelief, "I didn't think that this youth would be able to hold on until now after drinking the blood of a level 7 giant python. However, his blood is surging. I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on." It's hard to say. The fact that this youth can hold on until now is enough to show that he's not ordinary. The old man stroked his beard and said, "Let's protect him for now. If he can hold on, his strength will definitely increase greatly." Hearing him say this, the other 3 nodded and sat down not far away to protect the red-clothed youth. As time quietly passed, one of the old men saw the red-clothed youth's spiritual energy slowly increase and couldn't help but exclaim, "Look, he's really advancing. Hiss, he's still advancing. There's no sign of him stopping at level 3. The few people were shocked. After a while, they saw that the youth's spiritual energy had once again advanced from level 4 to level 5. This Why does this advancement look so easy? What is this youth's background? The few people were speechless. One had to know that spiritual energy cultivation was different from profound energy cultivation. Many cultivators were unable to break through the level of a great spiritual master and enter the level of a foundation-building cultivator. Only by becoming a foundation-building cultivator could one be considered an immortal and have a lifespan of 200 years. Among 100 great swordsmen, at most one or two would successfully advance. To enter the level of a golden core from a foundation-building cultivator was 1 in 10,000. There were some cultivators who were over 50 years old, but they were still only at the level of great spirit master. Yet, this youth, who was merely in his teens, was advancing as if he were jumping on a pedal. He was advancing step by step. How could they not be extremely shocked? Under the incredulous gazes of the four old men, the red-clothed youth actually sat there cross-legged for 3 days and 3 nights. His strength was also increasing at a steady pace. Perhaps it was because they had been staring at him for 3 days and 3 nights, but the four old men were shocked by his abnormal advancement speed and were unable to regain their senses for a long time. For 3 days and 3 nights, they didn't sleep or rest. They just stared at the red-clothed youth, thinking the same thing. No matter which sect this youngster was from, they had to find a way to poach him into their sect. Look, he advanced again. An old man swallowed his saliva as he stared at the red-clothed youth excitedly. His expression was like a person who had not eaten for half a month and was staring at a piece of fat meat. He wanted nothing more than to rush forward and snatch him back into the sect. Hiss! He's going to attack the great spirit master realm. Chapter 223. As Feng Jie's spiritual power continued to surge upward, her spiritual power instantly burst out, forming a strong spiritual power aura around her. In the next moment, the surging spiritual energy was absorbed into her body. As time passed, the spiritual energy in her body gradually calmed down and dissipated, as if the previous scene had never happened. However, her spiritual energy rank had leaped straight to the cultivation of a third-stage great spiritual master. Fangzhou exhaled lightly and slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were overflowing with joy. At this moment, she only felt that everything she saw with her naked eyes was different. Moreover, she could hear the soft chirping of insects clearly. It was as if there was a steady flow of spiritual energy circulating in her body. It was very comfortable. She looked at the 4 elders sitting in 4 different directions. Seeing them staring at her in a daze, she couldn't help but reveal a smile. Flicking her robe, she stood up from the ground and bowed to the 4 elders. She said clearly, "Thank you, seniors, for protecting me. If it weren't for the 4 elders protecting her, she wouldn't have been able to predict what would happen in these 3 days and nights. After all, if she was disturbed during her cultivation, the consequences would be unimaginable." Hearing this, the 4 elders suddenly came back to their senses. They instantly jumped up and strode towards Fangzhou. "Young man, are you interested in joining our Guei sect?" "Young man, join our Qianghua sect. Our Qingqing sect is still the best. Join the College of Stars and Clouds is the best. I can let you become a specially recruited student." The 4 old men scrambled to be the first to speak, fearing that someone else would beat them to it. Hearing their words, Fangzhou was stunned for a moment, then smiled. "Thank you, seniors, for thinking so highly of me. However, I still have matters to attend to and have no intention of joining a sect at the moment." Seeing the frown of the 4 elders, her eyes flashed and she said, "However, I have long wanted to join the College of Stars and Clouds to cultivate. I'm just waiting for the enrollment to begin." Hearing this, the other 3 elders couldn't help but feel disappointed. However, they also knew that the College of Stars and Clouds was a famous school in the Qingting Kingdom. Even if their sects wanted to compete, they couldn't compare. Many cultivators and students from all over the world hoped to enter the College of Stars and Clouds. It was normal for this young man to choose the College of Stars and Clouds. "Ha ha ha ha. Good, good, good. It's good that you have such thoughts." The old man from the academy laughed heartily, looking at Fangzhou with a satisfied gaze. He took out a token from his sleeve and handed it to Fangzhou, saying, This is Star Cloud Star Token. Take it, and use this token to register at the Academy in the future. With this token in hand, you can enter the Academy directly and become a student of Star Cloud without having to go through the examination. Fengju took the token and looked at it. He put it away with a smile and said, "Thank you, Senior. This junior is Fengju. May I know Senior's name?" "Ha ha ha. Fengju? All right, this old man will remember this name. When I return to the Academy, I will definitely report and register it. My surname is Guan, and people call me Elder Guan. I am an associate academician of Star Cloud Academy." Hearing this, Fengju was a little surprised. He immediately bowed respectfully and said, "Greetings, Vice Headmaster Guan. This junior will remember it." He didn't expect that the Vice Headmaster of Star Cloud Academy would be the Vice Headmaster. The three elders at the side were disappointed. They didn't expect such a good seedling to be snatched away by Star Cloud Academy. Sigh. Fengju, right? If you change your mind, you can come to Guei sect. If you join our sect, we will definitely promote you to an elite disciple. Chapter 224. Of course, the other two elders didn't stand on ceremony with Elder Guan and made their promises as well. Seeing this, Fengju smiled and cupped his hands. "Thanks for Senior's kindness. Junior will remember Senior's words. However, I have some matters to attend to and cannot stay here for long. Seniors, Vice Headmaster Guan, Junior will take his leave first." Good. Go." Master Guan narrowed his eyes and waved his hand. He was afraid that if he stayed any longer, those three people would try to snatch him away. Therefore, he asked him to leave first. Seeing this, Fengju didn't hesitate and left. When the red figure disappeared from their line of sight, one of them slapped his thigh and shouted, Look, we forgot about the important matters. We didn't even ask him how he got into the training forest, and we let him go." Hearing this, the others remembered and sighed. They were too shocked by the red-clothed youth's advancement and forgot about this matter. Now that he was gone, it was pointless to ask again. Only Elder Guan stroked his beard and looked at the direction Fengju left. He thought to himself, "Why do I feel like I was fooled by that youth? Will he really enter the School of Stars and Clouds?" On the other side, Fengju had already reached the mountain path and let out a sigh of relief. He smiled widely and said, "Good thing I escaped quickly. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to get away." She looked at the mountain path, and it seemed to be endless. Seeing this, she couldn't help but murmur, "Only those who have entered the Foundation establishment stage can fly on swords. Only those who have the Xian energy can fly on swords. Even though I have the Xian energy, I can't even fly on swords. If I can get a flying instrument, I can use it." Therefore, she could only continue to walk forward. Occasionally, she would use the cloud steps to fly, until she saw a strange scene on the mountain path. A white horse that was as fat as a pig was slowly walking backwards. A green-clothed man was sitting on the back of the horse. From time to time, he would use his legs to clamp the horse's belly and rein in the horse's reins to discuss with the fat horse. "Old White, let's go. When we reach the town ahead, I'll at most prepare a big meal for you. Okay?" "Chi." The horse turned its head and snorted. Fengju, who was coming up from behind, saw that it was not an ordinary horse because it had two bud-like horns on its head. "Senior Bai, I'm telling you, if you continue to be disobedient, then I'll hit you." The young man threatened as he took out a soft whip from his waist and was about to swing it down. However, his whip only made a sound in the air. Before it could even touch his horse, the horse stomped its hind hooves and threw the young man off the horse. The young man panicked and tried to clamp the horse's belly, but because of the strength of the swing, he fell to the ground. "Hiss! Old Bai! How dare you dump me? You wait. When we reach the town, I'll definitely sell you off." The young man stood up angrily. He felt a burning pain from his palm being scraped by the sand. When Fengju saw this scene, he could not help but laugh. He walked forward and patted the horse's butt. What a fat horse! It even learned how to walk backward? How strange. When the young man saw Fengju, he was slightly startled. "Who are you?" He pulled the horse's reins and asked cautiously. However, at this moment, The horse turned its head and stared at Fengjiu. Its eyes lit up, and it actually moved closer to Fengjiu. It stuck out its tongue and was about to lick her face. Fengjiu was so frightened that she quickly retreated. Chapter 225. Whenever she dodged to the side, the horse would move to the side. The horse's head and neck leaned forward, its tongue sticking out from time to time as it tried to lick her face. The young man was stunned when he saw this. He quickly pulled on the reins and shouted, "Lao Bai, he's a man." Then, he said apologetically to Fengjiu, "Lao Bai is a little lecherous. He must have mistaken you for a girl because you're so handsome." Fengjiu's mouth twitched. She looked at the fat horse that was still struggling to get closer and asked, "What kind of horse is this? Why does it have horns?" Lao Bai is a mutated spiritual beast. Because it looks like a horse and has dragon-like horns, it can also be called a dragon horse. Other spiritual horses run extremely fast, but Lao Bai eats a lot and is lazy, so it's so fat. The young man looked at the dragon horse helplessly and said, "I didn't want to bring it out, but my family said that they were going to slaughter it and cook it for dinner. I couldn't bear to bring it out, so I brought it out. I didn't expect it to start causing trouble halfway through." Hiss, hiss. The dragon horse called Lao Bai neighed and wagged its tail, trying to get closer to Fengjiu. Fengjiu was curious and said, "This dragon horse looks very spiritual." As she spoke, she reached out and touched the horse's head. The horse neighed and lay down on the ground, kicking its hooves in the air with an excited look on its face. Fengjiu's mouth twitched when she saw this. She thought to herself, "It's really a lecherous horse. My name is Bai Xiao. What about you?" Fengjiu glanced at her and said, "We've just met by chance. Why do you ask for my name?" As she spoke, she cupped her hands and continued walking forward. She was using the cloud trace steps, so her walking speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, she was 50 meters away. Hiss. Lao Bai, who had fallen on the ground, neighed and leaped up from the ground when he saw Fengjiu leave. He kicked his hooves and chased after her. Old Bai, wait, I haven't gotten on the horse yet," Bai Xiao exclaimed as he was dragged along by the reins. Fengjiu, who heard the commotion behind her, turned around to take a glance. Black lines appeared on her forehead, and she immediately sped up. However, what she did not expect was that Lao Bai, who looked as fat as a pig, was not careless at all when he ran. He actually chased her all the way and was not shaken off by her. Seeing that she was about to reach the town, she gradually slowed down and exhaled softly. She glanced back and simply stopped. Phew, it's so bumpy. Bai Xiao fell from the horse's back and sat on the ground, panting. She could only glare at Lao Bai, who was lying on the red-clothed youth fawningly. Fengjiu was also staring at this lecherous horse that was drooling at her. How should she put it? This dragon horse was not strong. Instead, it was full of fat. There was no beauty in it at all. Even though it could run fast, she really did not want such a fat horse to follow her. "Hey, take care of your horse. Don't follow me anymore." She looked at the youth on the ground and said. As soon as she finished speaking, her red figure flashed and quickly entered the town gate. In a flash, she disappeared into the crowd. Lao Bai was stunned for a moment. He neighed and quickly stood up. He kicked his hooves and continued to chase after her. Chapter 226. On the other side, Fengjiu entered the inn and shouted, "Waiter, give me some of your signature dishes and a jug of wine." "Okay." The waiter, who was greeting the guests, answered loudly and walked over with a jug of water in his hand. "Dear guest, please have a cup of tea first. The dishes will be served soon." Fengjiu was originally sitting by the window on the first floor. However, when she casually glanced outside, she saw the fat horse looking left and right to find her. She was so scared that she quickly moved back. Until the fat horse passed by outside, she sighed softly and muttered, "This is so strange. Why is it following me all the way?" She picked up the teacup and gently blew on the steaming tea. As she was drinking, she heard a sound coming from the window. She turned her head and immediately cried out, "Wah!" The teacup in her hand slipped and fell on the table, spilling tea all over the table. She saw that Lao Bai had come to the window unknowingly. It stuck its head out and breathed 2 puffs of air at her. It even grinned and wagged its tail from time to time, as if to say, "Look, I found you again. It's really haunting me." She stared blankly. She saw that the fat horse's 2 front hooves leaped forward and actually stopped at the window. It just stared at her like that, causing the surrounding people to laugh. "Whose horse is this? It's so fat. This horse even has horns on its head. It doesn't look like an ordinary horse. Look at this horse. It even knows how to crawl on the window." Hearing the laughter of the crowd, the innkeeper ran over angrily. "Whose horse is this? How can we do business here? Take it away, take it away." Then, he said apologetically to Fangio, "Dear guest, I'm so sorry. I don't know whose horse ran out and disturbed you. How about this? Please go to the 2nd floor and sit down." "No need, no need. I'll sit here." Fangio waved her hand and said. A young man ran over from the crowd and shouted, "It's my horse! It's my horse!" The young man ran over while panting. He hurriedly pulled the horse back and scolded angrily, "I'm so angry. Old buy. I will definitely sell you. I'll buy it." Fangio played with the cup on the table as he looked at the man and horse. Well, what?" The young man was taken aback. She curled her lips and said, "I said I'm buying it. How much are you selling it for? Didn't he want to sell it? Just sell it to me." This, the young man scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "Actually, I was just scolding it. I didn't want to sell it. This horse obviously likes me very much. Look, it has been chasing me all the way. Since you can't tame it, why don't you sell it to me?" She looked at the fat horse lying on the window and raised her eyebrows. Her lips curled into a devilish smile. "Old buy, don't you agree? You want to follow me too, right?" Hiss. Old buy raised his head and neighed. He raised his hind leg and kicked at the young man. Seeing this, Bai Xiao quickly retreated. Her face was red, either from embarrassment or anger. She angrily slapped the horse's butt and scolded, "Old Bai, you're a guy who forgets his friends when he's in love. He's a man, not a woman. Why are you so agitated?" Seeing this scene, Fangio couldn't help but laugh and said, "Hey, I didn't like it at first, but now I like it more and more. What should I do?" Chapter 227. Bai Xiao face-palmed and turned her head away. She could not bear to watch any longer. She muttered, "This is so embarrassing." It was his horse, but it wagged its tail to please the young man in red. It was his horse, but it refused to let him ride it. It even kicked him and chased after the young man in red. He had already said that the young man in red was a man, but it still kept moving forward. Since when did Lao Bai's taste change to that of both men and women? Ha ha ha, this horse is really interesting. It seems like it can understand human language. That's right. Although it's a little fat, it's still quite funny. If the young man in red didn't say anything, I would have thought that the horse was his. Look, that horse is still moving forward. Don't tell me it wants to kiss the young man? Ha ha ha. As soon as the laughter was heard, everyone inside and outside laughed loudly because such a scene was really quite rare. At this moment, Bai Xiao came in from outside. She walked to Fengzhou's table and sat down. She said, "Lao Bai is not a commodity. I can sell it to you. However, since Lao Bai likes you, I can give it to you." Fengzhou raised his eyebrows when he heard this. "Give it to me?"
Yes.
Bai Xiao nodded and said, "I've had Lao Bai for many years. This fellow usually does nothing but eat and sleep. I had no choice but to bring it out. I can tell that Lao Bai likes you very much, so I can give it to you." "In that case, thank you very much." She laughed heartily. She took 2 glasses and poured 2 glasses of wine. "This is to you." Bai Xiao took a sip and put down the glass. "I'm not used to drinking." "Then let's eat," Fengzhou said with a smile. He shouted, "Waiter, give me 2 more dishes and a bowl of soup." "Okay." The waiter answered and quickly went to prepare the dishes. "Can you tell me your name now?" Bai Xiao looked at Fengzhou and asked. Fengzhou smiled and said, "My name is Fengzhou. My name is Bai Xiao. I told you before." He smiled and paused for a moment before continuing. "Actually, old Bai is very easy to raise. You just have to prepare 5 kilograms of small fish or prawns for every meal." Cough, cough. Upon hearing this, Fengjiu choked on the wine. He patted his chest and asked in astonishment, "What did you say? You don't feed it grass, but fish and prawns?" Nodding his head, Bai Xiao said with a straight face, "Yes, Old White is not an ordinary horse. He is a dragon horse and a mutated spirit beast. Therefore, he is not a vegetarian. He only eats meat." Fish and prawns? That's eating better than a human's. No wonder he's so fat. She glanced at Lao Bai, who was leaning against the window and listening to their conversation. She wondered if she had found trouble for herself. After the meal, Fengjiu paid the bill and went outside. He said to Bai Xiao, "I still have things to do, so I'll take my leave first. If fate wills it, we'll meet again. I'll treat you to a good meal then." "Okay. Take care." Bai Xiao cupped his hands and looked at Old White, who did not even look at him. He shook his head and said to Fengjiu, "I'll have to trouble you to take care of Old White in the future." "Hee, don't worry. I'll train him well." She smiled wickedly and glanced at Old White, who was wagging his tail. Chapter 228. When Fengjiu saw Lao Bai lower his head and use his nostrils to lift the girl's skirt, he covered his eyes and silently turned his head away. This Lao Bai has already become a spirit. A sharp cry suddenly sounded out. The girl in the pink dress used her hand to press down her skirt that was blown up by the wind as she turned around with a flushed face. On the other hand, right when Fengjiu was about to get off her horse and apologize, Senior White's large tongue swept out and actually licked the young woman's face, causing her face to be covered in saliva, and it terrified the young woman to the point her beautiful face turned pale and was stunned. When Fengjiu saw this scene, the corner of his mouth twitched and several black lines appeared on his forehead. "This guy? Why is this guy so perverted?" "Young miss." A young servant girl hurriedly supported the girl and used a handkerchief to wipe away the saliva on her face. The man at the side seemed to have just recovered from his shock. He looked at the fat horse that was lazily glancing at him and scolded angrily. "Audacious beast." The man angrily cursed. At the same time, he waved his fist towards Lao Bai's face. However, he did not expect that his fist would be blocked by a hand. "Young master, please don't be angry." Fengjiu, who had dismounted, blocked the man's fist with one hand and apologetically said, "I'm truly sorry. My horse is a bit perverted. It definitely did not intend to take liberties with the young miss. I hope young master and young miss will not take offense." "Perverted? Humph. I think you're the one who's perverted. It must be you who instigated your spirit beast to do such a shameless thing," the man sternly shouted. At the same time, he withdrew his blocked fist. His sharp gaze stared straight at the handsome red-clothed Fengjiu. "Spirit beast?" When the surrounding people heard these two words, they began to size up the fat horse. When they saw the two horns on its head, they could not help but whisper to each other, "This horse is different from ordinary ones. Is it really a spirit beast? I heard that spirit beasts are quite valuable. Moreover, spirit beasts that can be used as mounts have all been tamed by beast tamers. However, this spirit beast is a bit too fat. From the looks of it, I don't even know if it can run." "I know. Ordinary people like us who eat the meat of spirit beasts will become stronger and stronger. Immortal cultivators can absorb spiritual energy after eating it. It's good stuff." Hearing the crowd's words, Fengjiu smiled. Seeing that the man was staring at him with an unfriendly expression, he smiled and looked at the beautiful girl whose face had turned pale from fright. Coming up to her, his handsome face revealed a devilish and charming smile. His eyes overflowed with moving brilliance as he gently gazed at her. "Miss, I'm really sorry. It's all my fault for not taking good care of my mount and causing you to be frightened." Her voice didn't have the gentleness of a woman, nor the toughness of a man. On the contrary, it was like a pool of clear water, clear and warm, with a trace of hoarseness and charm. When one heard it, it was like a fine feather tickling one's ear, and it numbed one's heart. The dainty young girl looked at the red-clothed young man in front of her and saw his clear eyes overflowing with a moving brilliance as he stared at her. That pair of eyes that seemed to be able to speak caused her pretty face to turn red and her heart to beat irregularly. She then nervously lowered her head. It's fine. The young girl's gentle voice carried a trace of nervousness and shyness. However, she couldn't help but want to raise her head to look at the handsome red-clothed young man in front of her. Chapter 229. Miss is not only adorable, but also kind and magnanimous enough to not bicker with this mount of mine. This one thanks you. She smiled and cupped her hands in greeting. Seeing the young girl's beautiful face as red as an apple, the smile in her eyes deepened. She held Lao Bai's hand and said, "If that's the case, this one will take her leave first." "Oh, okay. Take care, young master." The young girl was captivated by Fengjiu's words and electrifying eyes. She was practically responding to Fengjiu's words. When he saw the red-clothed youth apologize and make amends, the man at the side couldn't say anything else. After all, even his cousin didn't say anything, so there was no need to say anything about him. If he continued to look for trouble with the youth, then it would seem that he was intentionally going against the youth. It was only when Fengjiu mounted the horse and rode Lao Bai out of the town gate that the young girl came back to her senses. I forgot to ask that young master's name." Seeing her regretful face, the man's face darkened. He flung his sleeve and said, "Let's go back." 2 days later, Fengjiu held White's hand and entered the Six-Path City's gate. When she saw the bustling scene inside the city, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. This is indeed a Tier 6 nation. The buildings and shops in this city are incomparable to the imperial city of glorious Sun Empire. Have you heard? The famous ghost doctor recently came to our Six-Path City. It is said that the city lord personally received her. Impossible. I heard that there was an accident at the medicine fair. The ghost doctor was kidnapped by people from the Yin Palace. I heard that she was released long ago. Otherwise, why would those medicines appear everywhere recently? There are not many medicines appearing in the auction recently, but every bottle is a treasure among treasures. It is said that our city lord was lucky enough to buy a bottle of the ghost doctor's medicine. After taking the medicine, the city lord finally broke through the bottleneck that he had been unable to break through. This matter has spread throughout the upper-class families. I only heard about it from my cousin, who works in the city lord's mansion. Are you serious? It's that powerful? Of course, let me tell you, this ghost doctor's medicine is said to be more powerful than the alchemist's immortal pills, and you can't buy it even if you have money. Didn't you see that there are a lot of outsiders coming to our Six-Path City these 2 days? They must have come for the ghost doctor after receiving the news. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard the conversation between the people at the tea stall. A faint light flashed in his eyes as he led Lao Bai forward. After walking for a while, she stopped in front of an inn called Yunshang. The waiter inside quickly came out to welcome her. "A guest has arrived." The waiter shouted inside as he took the reins from Fengjiu. He said, "Guest, you have come at the right time. Our inn has a superior room on the 2nd floor. The lighting is excellent." "Yes." She tossed a gold coin to the waiter and instructed, "Prepare 10 caddies of small fish and prawns for my horse. The rest is yours." The waiter immediately smiled and said, "Thank you, guest. Rest assured, this little one will take good care of guest's mount." The waiter who came out from behind led her to the counter. After paying, he brought her to the 2nd floor. After instructing the waiter to prepare hot water, she took a bath and changed her red clothes into a white robe. Her black hair was tied up high, and she restrained her arrogance and evil charm, becoming a graceful, noble young master. Seeing that it was still early, she sat cross-legged on the bed and meditated until evening. When the sky gradually darkened, she got up and walked out of the inn. She planned to stroll around the night scene of Six-Path City and look for food. Chapter 230. In a house, Hui Lang hurried to the backyard. Seeing his master sitting there drinking tea, he stepped forward and bowed. "Master, according to this subordinate's investigation, the ghost doctor in this Six-Path City is most likely a fake." The Yama Lord looked at him and said, "What do you mean?" "The time of appearance is wrong. The ghost doctor in Six-Path City appeared 7 days ago, but at that time, he was still in our building. So this ghost doctor is a fake. Since he is a fake, we should find a chance to expose him," the Yama Lord said in a low voice. After a pause, he asked. Is there any news about him from the black market? Grey Wolf stared blankly for a moment before realizing that his master was referring to the ghost doctor. Only then did he reply, There's no news at the moment. However, the attendant by the ghost doctor's side heard the news about the ghost doctor and came over with the people from the black market. No news about him? Where did she go to hide? The Yama Lord thought in his heart. His fingers tapped on the stone table. His lips were pursed and his eyebrows were slightly furrowed. Yi and Hui Lang looked at each other and lowered their heads at the same time. Their master did not care about the matters in the Hall of Hell. As soon as he heard about the ghost doctor, he came over. If the other party was a woman, they would be very happy. However, the ghost doctor was a man, and a disfigured one at that. How could they be happy? Hui Lang thought for a moment and looked up at the Yama Lord. He carefully suggested, Master, the night view of Six Paths City is amazing. Why don't we go out for a walk? The Yama Lord responded. He brushed his robe and walked out. Yi and Hui Lang saw this and quickly followed behind. As night fell, the shops and inns on both sides of the street lit up one after another. The lights lit up the entire dark night like stars in the night sky, dazzling and enchanting. On the bustling streets, there were groups of close friends, pairs of men and women, and children running and playing on the streets. All of them had joyful smiles on their faces. The hawkers' cries and the waiters' greetings mixed with the numerous voices, forming a lively and bustling scene. At an inconspicuous stall on the side of this lively street, Fengjiu, who was dressed in a white robe, was eating a bowl of spicy noodles. It was so spicy that sweat oozed out of her forehead. Her red lips were also scalded red by the spicy oil. It was very moving. The men who were also eating noodles and the two women at the other table couldn't help but stare at her in a daze. Boss, another bowl. She shouted and ate the noodles. She pushed the remaining spicy soup to the side, poured a cup of water, and drank it. Originally, she only wanted to try a bowl of the famous noodles. Who knew that after one bowl, she would be tempted by the spicy oil and ordered another bowl. Come. Hot noodles with oil, young master, be careful. The middle-aged man shouted and brought another bowl. Fengjiu moved her chopsticks and ate again. The people next to her saw that she was not afraid of spicy food and could not help but swallow and shout, Boss, I want another bowl too. I want another bowl too. Seeing this, the boss laughed so hard that his eyes couldn't be seen. He hurriedly served the dishes to everyone. Finally, he sent a plate of side dishes to Feng Nine. This is a side dish made by us. Please have a taste. Okay, thank you. Chapter 231. She secretly covered half of her face with her hands and leaned on the table to look at the man in the black robe who stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens. That aura, that pressure. Who else could it be but the Yama Lord? Behind him were Yi and Hui Lang. But why did they come to Six Paths City? Could it be that they heard that the ghost doctor was here, so they came to catch her? TSK. That's too unkind. At this time, she didn't even think about who was the unkind one. She wanted to run away and even stole the 1,000-year-old ginseng. That's not it. I don't think he's seen my face before. At this time, she remembered that the scars on her face were messy all over, and she had been applying ointment on her face. None of them had seen her face after she recovered. Even if she stood in front of them now, they probably wouldn't be able to recognize her, right? Thinking of this, she grinned and coughed lightly. She sat up straight and continued to eat her noodles. Master, this oil noodles is a specialty of Six Paths City. Master, do you want to try it? Hui Lang pointed at the stall full of people and asked the Yama Lord in front of him. The Yama Lord was about to shake his head when he saw the white-clothed youth who was eating his noodles. For some reason, he walked over and sat down opposite the white-clothed youth. Fengjiu, who was eating her noodles, wanted to quickly finish eating and leave. After all, the Yama Lord's eyes were very sharp. It was fine if she didn't meet him, but if she did, she didn't know if she would be recognized. So, she didn't even raise her head to look at him. Who knew? When she was halfway through eating, she saw a person sitting opposite her. Just based on his aura, she didn't need to raise her head to know that it was the Yama Lord. Could it be that he recognized me? That's impossible, right? Or does he also want to eat the oil noodles? SK. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. She met him everywhere. Boss, give me a bowl of noodles with oil. Grey Wolf shouted as he stood behind his master with Ing. Yes, yes. When the owner saw the imposing manner of the three people, he couldn't help but feel a little frightened. He hurriedly responded and served a bowl of piping hot noodles with oil. After that, he said, Sir, be careful not to burn your mouth. The Yama Lord frowned and looked at the bowl of oily red noodles in front of him. He then looked at the young man who was slurping down the noodles. He paused and asked, Is it delicious? There was a trace of doubt in his deep voice. He looked at the young man who kept his head down and saw that he hadn't raised his head since he sat down. Could it be that he didn't dare to see him? Could it really be her? When he thought of this, his mood suddenly improved. When his deep gaze looked at the young man's slightly swollen lips, he couldn't help but smile. However, Hui Lang, who couldn't see the situation clearly, thought that the Yama Lord was asking him. So, he took a step forward and said with a grin, Master, the oil noodles have to be spicy to taste good. You'll know once you try it. But be careful not to burn it. This spicy oil is very hot. Before he finished speaking, he saw his master's cold gaze sweep over him. He was a little confused. He paused and asked carefully, Master, what's wrong? Ing, who was standing behind the Yama Lord, glanced at Hui Lang and rolled his eyes speechlessly. His master was clearly asking the young man in white. When was he asking him? Why did he go up and answer him? He was simply a rash person who didn't know how to read the situation. Boss, the bill. Chapter 232. When the king of hell saw the young man raise his head, he thought that he would see the disfigured face of the young man. However, he did not expect to see such a beautiful and seductive face. The youth was clearly wearing a white robe, but he had a seductive and enchanting aura about him. His slightly raised eyebrows, his half-squinted eyes, his smooth and creamy cheeks, and his slightly swollen but red lips, all of them exuded a seductive and enchanting aura. This was a charming youth. He was already so enchanting even before he grew up. In a few more years, his charm would be irresistible to both men and women. Looking at the youth, there was a faint admiration in his eyes, but his heart was heavy with disappointment. It wasn't her. Fengju looked straight at the Yama Lord's eyes, because she knew that if she flinched or avoided his gaze, he would definitely notice. Therefore, she generously met his gaze and let him look at her. Unsurprisingly, when she saw the light in his deep black eyes, the disappointment that flashed through his eyes was reflected in her eyes. She threw a silver coin to the owner, who was quickly walking over, and said with a smile, Keep the change. I'll give it to this young master as well. After saying that, she glanced at the Yama Lord with a smile and turned to walk away. Thank you, young master. Thank you, young master. The owner took the silver coin and thanked her, then gave the Yama Lord a side dish. Young master, if it's not enough, there's more. Eat as much as you want. Only then did he leave. At this time, the Yama Lord's deep eyes were half squinted, and his gaze fell on the white figure. No one knew what he was thinking. Watching the white figure gradually walk away, his eyes suddenly shot out a ray of light, and he suddenly stood up. Damn it! This woman! She actually dared to trick him. Seeing their master get up and chase after the youth, Hui Lang was stunned for a moment and asked, Master, what are you doing? Why are you chasing after the youth? Hurry up, don't ask so many questions. Ing shouted and hurriedly followed. As soon as Fengjiu blended into the crowd, he quickened his pace and disappeared from the Yama Lord's sight. The Yama Lord chased after him, only to find that the figure had disappeared without a trace. Immediately, he went forward to search. Hui Lang and Ing were chasing after him. Seeing that their master was actually chasing after that strange young man, leaving them behind, Hui Lang couldn't help but complain as he chased after him. Master, why have your preferences become so strange recently? Although that young man looked quite devilish, he was still a man after all. Could it be that Master was really bent by that brat, the ghost doctor? Now that you see a handsome young man, you can't help but want to kidnap him? Hearing this, Ing glared at him. Don't talk nonsense. If Master hears this, you'll suffer. I am also telling the truth. Master Da Huilang's face was slightly pale, and he looked embarrassedly at his master who had suddenly appeared. For a moment, the smile on his face was somewhat stiff. The Yama Lord glanced at him, and his low voice was cold as he said, "Bent? Master, please forgive me." Huilang knelt down on one knee, cold sweat dripping down his body, and said in a trembling voice, Actually, this subordinate was bent by Inget. Hearing this, Ingi was shocked. He glared and kicked him. What nonsense are you talking about? Chapter 233. The Yama Lord glanced at the two of them and said in a low and magnetic voice, I don't care who turned who gay. Now, go and find that person. The two of them hurriedly asked, Master wants to find that young man? That's right. The Yama Lord replied in a low voice. He paused and looked at the two of them before saying, She is the ghost doctor. What? The two of them were shocked and exclaimed at the same time. Ghost doctor? That white-robed young man? Is this for real? How did Master recognize her? Master didn't recognize the wrong person, right? That white-robed young man. How could he be the ghost doctor? Huilang braced himself and asked. It was hard to believe that the disfigured young man was the same person as the handsome white-robed young man. The Yama Lord glanced at him coldly. Ingi saw this and immediately said, This subordinate will go and find her immediately. He quickly left after saying that. Your subordinate will go and look for him as well. I will definitely find him, Grey Wolf hurriedly said. He didn't dare to ask any more questions and quickly left. The Yama Lord stood with his hands behind his back and looked at the crowd with his deep eyes. He paused for a moment and then walked into the street and blended into the crowd. At this time, the Yama Lord and the others didn't know that the person they were looking for was sitting under a table a few meters away from them and had heard their words. Strange, how did he recognize her? Fangzhou touched her face and couldn't understand. He hadn't seen her face in perfect condition, so how could he recognize her after she recovered her looks? After sitting under the stall for a while, she came out. After looking around, she quickly went to the inn. After searching for an entire night, Huilang and Ying still couldn't find any trace of Fangzhou. After all, there were millions of people in Six Path City, and the city was divided into many districts. Each district had at least hundreds of thousands of people. It was easier said than done to find the whereabouts of one person among hundreds of thousands of people. When dawn broke, the two of them returned to the courtyard and reported to their master in the main house, Master, your subordinates have searched the entire night, but there was no news of the ghost doctor. There's no need to look. The voice of the Yama Lord came from the house. I have a way to make her appear on her own. Hearing this, Huilang and Ying looked at each other. Let the ghost doctor appear herself? That's impossible, right? He was trying his best to avoid them, so why would he appear on his own? However, their master had never done anything that he wasn't confident in. Could it be that there was really a way to make the ghost doctor appear herself? At this time, Fangzhou had entered the space to cultivate for a night. When he came out, his whole body felt refreshed. Her spiritual power cultivation was already at the level of a great spirit master, so she had to make preparations to break through to the foundation establishment stage. Although there were medicines that could help her advance, in order to enter the foundation establishment stage, she still needed a foundation establishment pill. However, she hadn't come into contact with this world's medicinal pills. If she wanted to refine a foundation establishment pill, she would need a lot of things. Originally, she thought that since Six Path City was an extremely prosperous town, she could buy all the things she needed to refine pills here. However, now that she was being targeted by the Yama Lord, just thinking about it gave her a headache. Why was this Yama Lord so persistent? After changing into a red robe, she went out and walked into a high-end shop called Treasure Pavilion. Young master, please come in. If you see anything you like, the price is negotiable. The shopkeeper said with a smile as he led Fangzhou inside. Chapter 234. Yes, I'll show it to young master. The shopkeeper smiled and went to the counter to take out a triangular cauldron and placed it in front of Fangzhou. Young master, please take a look. This is a pill cauldron, a 9th-tier spirit tool. It's most suitable for beginners. Fangzhou picked up the triangular cauldron that looked like an incense cauldron and asked, "This thing can be used to refine pills?" Hearing this, the shopkeeper was stunned and the smile on his face froze. He looked at Fangzhou and said, "Young master, this is a grade 9 spirit weapon. You can use it as long as you insert spirit energy into it. Once you insert spirit energy into it, the small cauldron will become bigger and can be used to refine pills." Ninth tier? Ninth tier seems to be the lowest tier, right? Are there any better ones? Young master, take a look at this. This is a 7th tier pill cauldron. This is the work of a master refiner. Whether its appearance or quality, it's above average. This is a twin dragon cauldron, a 6th tier pill cauldron. It's also a master refiner's work. Young master can take a look at which one you like. The shopkeeper placed the small pill cauldrons on the counter for Fangzhou to choose from. She picked up the pill cauldron and looked at it, asking, "What's the price of this 6th tier cauldron?" Hee, this is a 6th tier spirit tool. The price is 88,888 gold coins. If young master really wants it, I can reduce the price to 88,888 gold coins. So expensive? Fangzhou looked at the shopkeeper in shock. Just this little cauldron costs 88,880 gold coins? This is daylight robbery. The shopkeeper's mouth twitched. "Young master, this isn't an incense cauldron. This is a pill cauldron, a spirit tool. 88,800 gold coins for a 6th tier cauldron is a very fair price." Fangzhou shook his head. "It's too expensive. I can't afford it. 100 silver coins is equivalent to 1 gold coin. 80,000 gold coins. How many silver coins would that be? This thing is too expensive." Hearing this, the shopkeeper was speechless for a moment, because he had never met such a customer. After all, he saw that this red-clothed young master's clothes and bearing were extraordinary. He had the appearance of an elegant young master. He originally thought that this young master was a noble who did not lack money. Who would have thought? Fengzhou's eyes flickered as he smiled and asked, "Shopkeeper, do you sell that kind of refining book?" This thing was so expensive. If he could refine it himself, not only would he be able to save a lot of money, he could also make money by refining equipment. Thinking about it, it was not bad. The shopkeeper was stunned for a moment. After glancing at Fengzhou, he said, "Someone has put a book here for sale. It only costs 100 gold coins. Take a look." He took out a shabby book from the cabinet and handed it over. Fengzhou took the book and flipped through it. Seeing that everything was recorded inside, he looked at the shopkeeper. "This old book costs 100 gold coins? 50 gold coins. I'll buy it." The corners of the shopkeeper's mouth twitched, and he said, "I say, young master, you bargain too ruthlessly, right? How are we going to do business if you cut it in half the moment you open your mouth? How about this? If you really want it, take it for 80 gold coins. If you don't have 80 gold coins, I won't sell it." Hearing this, Fengzhou smiled and straightforwardly took out the money to buy it. After putting away the book, he turned around and walked out. However, just as she walked out of the shop, she saw a familiar figure. When she saw that figure, her eyes lit up and revealed a smile. She ran towards that person and shouted at the same time, "Uncle!" Chapter 235. He turned around and saw the red figure running towards him. His mood inexplicably soared, but the expression on his face was full of doubt and indifference. "You are?" "It's me. Ghost. She blinked at him, her face full of joy. "Uncle, why are you here?" Hearing this, Ling Mohan showed a timely look of astonishment. "You are the ghost doctor?" He lowered his voice and looked around. "Your face? Hehe, it's cured. How is it? Isn't it handsome beyond compare?" She said with a narcissistic smile. Ling Mohan's deep gaze fell on her snow-white skin, taking in her beautiful face. His eyes flashed with a smile, and he said meaningfully, "Yes, it's very stunning." Fengzhou looked around and said, "Someone is looking for me. It's not safe on the street. Let's find a place to sit and talk. I'll treat you to a meal. How about it?" "Okay." He nodded in response, the corners of his mouth slightly raised. "Then let's go. There's a restaurant in front," Fengzhou said, and led him to the restaurant in front. After the two of them left, Hui Lang and Ying Yi, who came out from the shadows, widened their eyes, their faces full of disbelief. Hui Lang murmured, "Master said that there was a way to make the ghost doctor appear on her own. I didn't expect that he would really be able to make the ghost doctor appear on her own." Ying Yi was speechless and said, "Master is too black-bellied. He actually thought of this method. If the ghost doctor was sold, she would still help Master count the money." Thinking of his master's serious and cold, indifferent expression, Ying Yi despised him in his heart. Master must have been overjoyed at that time, yet he still pretended to be stunned and surprised. "Should we follow them and take a look?" Hui Lang elbowed Ying Yi and asked. "Follow them?" Ying Yi glanced at him. "Aren't you afraid of ruining Master's plans?" Hearing this, Hui Lang stopped thinking. "Then let's go back first?" "Yes, let's go. That ghost doctor is very clever. If we follow them, we will definitely be discovered. Let's go back and wait for the Master's news," Ying Yi said, and left with him. On the other side, Feng Jiu and Ling Mohan came to the restaurant and sat down. After ordering a few dishes, she asked, "Uncle, don't you need to go back to the College of Stars and Clouds? Why is he in Six Paths City?" Ling Mohan poured the wine and said, "Although I am a mentor of Xingyun, I have special privileges. I don't have to stay in the academy all the time." He poured her a cup of wine and asked, "You said that someone is looking for you. Could it be someone from Yindian?" "It's them. That Yama Lord is like a lingering spirit. I've already escaped, but he still chased me all the way here. I can't believe I met him here again. Fortunately, I escaped again," she said proudly. "It's not that easy to find someone in Six Paths City, even if he's the Lord of Yen Hall." "Lingering spirit?" Ling Mohan narrowed his eyes and smiled slightly. "It's said that this Yama Lord is very mysterious. Many people have not seen his true face. You've been captured for so long. Did you have the chance to see him?" "I did see him." "You don't say. He's really drool-worthy. However, it's too dangerous. We can only look at him from afar." She sighed and shook her head, her face full of regret. Chapter 236. He narrowed his eyes and took a sip of wine. His low and deep voice rang out unhurriedly. "Seeing that you were able to make it out alive from the Yama Palace, the Yama Lord must have not mistreated you." Upon hearing this, Feng Jiu glanced at him and saw that his beard covered most of his face. She couldn't see his face clearly. She couldn't help but look at his face, sizing him up. Looking at his somewhat familiar face, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. The smile on her lips slightly froze, but her tone was still as lazy as before. With a bit of curiosity, she asked, "Uncle, how old are you? Don't you feel hot with such a big beard?" Ling Mohan looked up and glanced at her. "I'm used to it." "Oh, you're used to it." She smiled and poured wine for him. Come, come. Let's drink. It's rare to see you here. By the way, Uncle, what are you doing in Six Paths City?" "I'm here to do something." Seeing that she picked up the wine glass and drank, he frowned and said, "Don't drink on an empty stomach. Eat some food." As he spoke, he put some food in her bowl. Looking at him being overly enthusiastic, Feng Jiu nodded awkwardly. "Okay." The two of them ate quietly and exchanged a few words from time to time. Ling Mohan didn't seem to treat himself as an outsider and kept putting food in her bowl from time to time. "Eat more." Looking at the small mountain of food in her bowl and seeing that he was putting more food in her bowl, she hurriedly stopped him. "Uncle, don't help me anymore. Look, there's so much food. I can't finish it." Hearing this, Ling Mohan noticed that the food in her bowl had indeed piled up like a small mountain. He couldn't help but cough lightly and looked away uncomfortably. Then, he started eating. Seeing this scene, Feng Jiu smiled and narrowed her eyes. She turned her eyes and said, "Uncle, are you familiar with Six Paths City? I want to buy some materials for refining weapons later. Can you take me to have a look?" "Sure." He nodded and said. Her eyes lit up, and she immediately said, "Okay, we'll go after we finish eating." Seeing the light in her eyes, Ling Mohan couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you afraid of meeting those people from Yindian who are looking for you? Isn't there an uncle here?" She looked at him with a smile and said, "Uncle, You won't just watch me get taken away, right? Ling Mohan did not respond, but after wiping the corners of his mouth, he said, "Let's go." As soon as his voice fell, he walked out. Fangzhou stood up and looked at the figure walking in front of him. His eyes moved slightly, and then he quickly followed. After paying the bill downstairs, they were led by Ling Mohan to a high-end commercial building with 2 shops. Looking at the 3-story building and the high-class facade, her gaze fell on the 3 words in the middle. 100 Treasures Tower? Uncle, are the things here very expensive? I can't afford anything too expensive. Hearing this, Ling Mohan glanced at her and then walked in. Come in and take a look. When Fangzhou came in, she realized that the things in the treasure house were like ants compared to this 100 Treasures Tower. The difference was too big. Shopkeeper, how much is this tripod? Chapter 237. This is a 4th-grade spiritual weapon, worth 428,000 gold coins. The shopkeeper said from the side, glanced at the 2 of them, and asked, What kind of spiritual weapon is young master looking for? This old man can introduce it to young master. Hearing the price, Fangzhou immediately retracted her gaze, looked at the shopkeeper and said, I want to buy some golden steel. I wonder if you have it here? Yes, young master, please wait a moment. The shopkeeper called a person and said. Not long after, the person brought a large piece of golden steel. Young master, do you think this is enough? If not, there is more behind. How much is this? She looked at the golden steel. It looked no different from ordinary iron. The shopkeeper said with a smile, Hee, this is not something expensive. This large piece only costs 10 gold coins. Hearing this, Fangzhou came to the side, lowered her voice and asked, Uncle, is this right? Ling Mohan glanced at her and asked, You plan to buy this to learn how to refine weapons? Yes. I originally wanted to buy a pill furnace, but it is too expensive. I can't afford it, so I want to learn and see if I can refine one myself. How about it? My idea is good, right? Looking at her proud appearance, he secretly shook his head, went to the counter, pointed at a pill furnace, and said to the shopkeeper, Take this out and give it to her. Hee, okay. The shopkeeper smiled and was about to take out the pill furnace when he heard the voice of the red-clothed youth. No need, I will buy it and learn how to refine weapons. I don't believe that I can't refine one. The shopkeeper smiled and said, Hee, refining weapons is not as easy as it sounds. If you want to refine a 4th-grade pill furnace, you can't refine it without 10 years of experience. Fangzhou choked and glanced at the words below the pill furnace. 1st-grade spiritual weapon, price, 2,800,000 gold coins. Uncle, this is so expensive, I can't afford it. His deep gaze swept past her body as he said, This 100 Treasures Tower can be bartered with items. I don't have anything valuable to barter with, but uncle, let's talk about it. She leaned closer to him, lowered her voice, and said with a smile, Since we're so familiar with each other, can you lend me some? Looking at the charming face in front of him, his heart skipped a beat. His breathing was slightly chaotic as he looked away. He forcefully suppressed the urge to pull her into his arms. At this moment, his low voice was slightly hoarse. If you lend it to me, you have to pay interest. Fangzhou's eyes flashed as he took in his expression. He smiled and said, Interest is interest. Thus, Fangzhou took the purple crystal card he gave him and bought a bunch of things. After putting them into the space, the smile on his face couldn't help but rise. Uncle, let's go, she said with a smile. However, in the next moment, her expression changed slightly. Hiss. Seeing her holding her stomach with an ugly expression, he frowned and asked, What's wrong? My stomach hurts? She frowned with an ugly expression and looked at the shopkeeper. Shopkeeper, do you have a toilet here? The shopkeeper was also stunned for a moment, then nodded. Yes, it's at the back. She looked at Ling Mohan and said with a frown, Uncle, I think I ate something bad just now. I'll go to the toilet. Can you wait for me here? Go ahead, Ling Mohan said as he watched her trot towards the back. Chapter 238. Looking at the empty latrine, Ling Mohan's face darkened. His deep eyes narrowed, revealing a dangerous aura. Good. Very good. This time, you actually managed to slip away right under my nose. You've got guts. His voice sounded like he was gnashing his teeth in anger. Come to think of it, he appeared as Ling Mohan. Who would have thought that she would notice that something was wrong in less than half a day? He didn't mind being taken advantage of, but the problem was that the woman actually ran away again. His face darkened as he stroked the beard on his chin. How did she recognize him? And when did she recognize him? Could it be that when he planned to appear as Ling Mohan, she had already planned to beat him at his own game? On the other hand, Fengjiu, who had returned to the inn, lay down on the bed, patted his chest and exhaled softly. Even after he returned to the inn and locked himself in the room, his heart was still beating fast. Too exciting. Who would have thought that the uncle was actually the Yama Lord? Who would have thought that she would deliver herself to his doorstep? Fortunately, he discovered her early and let her slip away. Otherwise, he would have caught her again. She knew it. How could the two of them have such similar figures? Even their facial features were exactly the same. Furthermore, the Yama King had appeared in the Six-Path City, and now, this uncle was here as well. The Yama Lord's pharmacy was developing an antidote for the Millennium Frost Poison, and this uncle also had the Millennium Frost Poison. This was too much of a coincidence. If she hadn't realized it, she would have been a fool. No, I can't stay in Six-Path City any longer. Now that I've almost bought everything, I should go to the black market and find Leng Shuang first. She turned over and jumped out of bed, walked to the table and poured herself a cup of wine. Then, she went downstairs and checked out of the room with the shopkeeper. Then, under the shopkeeper's lead, she went to the stables at the back. Who knew? This is my mount. She looked at the white horse that the shopkeeper led out. Her eyebrows raised slightly, and the corners of her lips curved into a smile. However, this smile did not reach her eyes. The shopkeeper was startled and asked, "Isn't this young master's mount? I heard from the waiter that young master's mount is white. There's only one white horse here." What about the waiter? He quit his job this morning. At this point, the shopkeeper's expression changed. Could it be that he secretly swapped young master's horse? Horse? Huh. Fengjiu sneered. My mount is a spirit beast, not a horse. Realizing the seriousness of the problem, the shopkeeper hurriedly said, I'm really sorry. Young master, such a thing happened when you stayed here. It's our fault in management. Young master, please wait a moment. I'll immediately send someone to the waiter's house to look for him. He just quit his job this morning and should still be at home now. Seeing that the shopkeeper didn't know anything about it, her expression softened, and she said, Get someone to bring me there. The innkeeper hurriedly responded and ordered someone to look after the inn. He personally brought Fengjiu to the waiter's house. However, on the street, they saw the smiling waiter turning a corner and walking into an alley. It's him. Where is he? The shopkeeper pointed. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a red shadow sweep past him. Seeing this, he quickly followed. On the other side, when Hui Lang and Ying Yi saw their master coming back with an ugly expression, they couldn't help but feel surprised. Chapter 239. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw his master glance at him coldly. That gaze made his hair stand on end. Could it be that another accident had happened? He was puzzled, but didn't dare to ask. Master always paid more attention to the ghost doctor's matters than expected. He thought that Master would only return at night. Who knew that he would return in less than half a day? Most likely, there really was an accident. But what could have happened? Could it be that the ghost doctor didn't give Master a good look? The two of them were perturbed as they looked at their master's dark face. Without saying a word, they entered the room and closed the door. After a long while, the two of them looked at each other and walked out of the courtyard to discuss in low voices. What do you think happened? Hui Lang looked at Ying Yi and asked. Ying Yi pondered and said, It must have something to do with the ghost doctor. Otherwise, Master's expression wouldn't be so bad. Say it. You shouldn't have let us follow you. If we had followed you secretly, we would have known what happened to Master and the ghost doctor. Thinking about it, Ying Yi lowered his voice and said, How about this? You go out and ask around? Where did Master go after we came back? And where did the ghost doctor go? We have people in Six-Path City, so it won't be hard to find out. Investigate what happened to Master today. This isn't too good. Hui Lang looked troubled. If Master knows about this, we'll have to bear the consequences. You're Master's personal attendant, and I'm Master's shadow guard. Look at Master's expression when he came back. Shouldn't we find out what happened? Moreover, this matter is most likely related to the ghost doctor. If you don't dare to investigate Master's whereabouts today, then investigate the ghost doctor. Hearing him say this, it seemed to make some sense. Thus, Hui Lang nodded. Okay, then I'll go and be back. After taking a few steps, he paused and looked at Ing Yi, asking, why don't you go? You can take part in this too. Ing Yi looked at him and said, I have to stay here and guard Master. I can also stay here and guard Master. You go and investigate, so that I won't be the one to suffer. Hui Lang walked back and indicated for him to go. You're really not going? I'm not going. Hui Lang shook his head. He felt that this was not a good task. If you don't want to go, I'll go. But don't ask me when you come back. On what basis? As Ing Yi walked out, he said, because I'm only investigating the ghost doctor. Only investigating the ghost doctor. Even if Master knew, it would be fine. Treacherous. Hui Lang cursed in a low voice. Watching him walk away, he returned to the courtyard to stand guard. On the other side, in the alley, Fangzhou stepped on the waiter's back and bent down to play with the dagger in his hand. He looked at the waiter's pale and frightened face on the ground. Where did you put my mount? What mount? I don't know. Before he could finish speaking, a shrill scream rang out. He saw that the second-rate waiter's back had been pierced by the dagger and blood immediately gushed out. The shopkeeper who had caught up was shocked and looked at Fangzhou with a trembling body. Young Master, if you have something to say, please don't kill him. Fangzhou pulled out the dagger and wiped the fresh blood on the waiter's face. His gentle voice revealed a bit of carelessness, but it was also frighteningly cold. Where's my mount? Chapter 240. Dawn Cloud Pavilion? She raised her brows and looked at the manager who was wiping off his cold sweat. What's that place? After he heard the name of the pavilion, the manager was stunned for a moment, and then he furiously stepped forward and kicked the attendant a few times. You bastard! Who told you not to be clean? You actually dared to sell a customer's mount to Dawn Cloud Pavilion. How hateful! Hiss. Manager, don't hit me. Young Master, spare me. I won't dare do it again. The attendant cried as he begged. At this moment, he didn't have the slightest bit of joy from receiving the money from before. When he thought about how the red-clothed young master was still waiting for him to speak, the manager said with slight uneasiness, Dawn Cloud Pavilion is a place where the disciples of noble families and some cultivators in the city relax and play when they have nothing to do. It's different from ordinary places. Ferocious beasts or spirit beasts are purchased there, and customers are also killed there. When he heard this, Fengzhou's eyes narrowed, and then he stepped on the back of the attendant's injured and bleeding hand, and his cold voice sounded out like ice. How did you steal my mount? With Senior White's lazy disposition, even Bai Shao might not be able to order it to leave. So how did this attendant get it to be sold at Dawn Cloud Pavilion? I put some medicine in the fish and prawns it ate, and then I used a cart to transport it away. At this moment, the attendant even had the heart to die. He originally thought that the customer wouldn't notice that his mount was missing so quickly, but who knew that he hadn't even had the time to run when the customer came looking for him. Fengzhou stretched out his hand and clasped it, and then one of the attendant's arms was removed. A miserable and shrill cry suddenly sounded out, and then the attendant fainted from the pain. The manager was shocked and hurriedly asked, He wouldn't die, right? Fengzhou glanced at the attendant on the ground and said, I only crippled one of his arms, he won't die. As soon as he finished speaking, he said, Where's Dawn Cloud Pavilion? Take me there. The manager swallowed his saliva and said, Young Master, things that enter Dawn Cloud Pavilion can't be retrieved. Moreover, they aren't people to be trifled with. They are not to be trifled with, but I am? She glanced at the innkeeper and said, I lost my mount in your inn. I'll deal with you later. Hurry up and lead the way. Don't dilly-dally. In the end, The manager had no choice but to bring Chun Shi before Cloud Dawn Pavilion. It's here. Young master, I won't be going in. Fangzhou waved his hand, indicating for him to go back first. He then walked in and followed the attendant to the open-air beast fighting arena at the back. It was a coliseum surrounded by 3-meter-tall iron cages containing ferocious beasts. There were a total of 100 iron cages, each containing 100 ferocious beasts or spirit beasts. At this moment, there were cheers all around. The whole place looked very lively. Even the sound of betting and talking could be heard. Do you think that young Master Lu can tame this spirit horse? If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I really wouldn't be able to see that this fat horse has such great ability. That's right. It's said that he bought it in the wee hours of the morning. Originally, no one paid attention to it because that fat horse had been lying lazily until those ferocious beasts were provoked by the people who shot it. They charged straight at that fat horse. At that time, everyone in the field thought that the fat horse was dead for sure. They didn't expect that it was actually knocked over. You guys came late and didn't see it. That scene made everyone stand up in an uproar. Heh, those aristocratic families' young masters are competing with that fat horse. Dawn Cloud Pavilion is also secretly happy. How much money did they earn? Chapter 241. At this moment, the young master in embroidered clothes suddenly pounced onto Senior White and hugged its neck before turning around with the intention of mounting it. However, Senior White flung him away, causing him to fly up into the sky, and then he somersaulted in midair before taking a few steps back and landing on the ground. At this moment, Senior White seemed to be slightly restless and uneasy. It kicked the ground with its hooves and hissed a few times in a low voice before suddenly charging towards the young master in embroidered clothes, and then it pounced onto the young master who just steadied himself and pressed him down onto its stomach. When they saw the young master in embroidered clothes being pressed down to the point his face flushed red and was unable to struggle free, everyone outside the arena roared with laughter, and their mixed laughter reverberated through the arena and was exceptionally loud. The young master in embroidered clothes was slightly embarrassed and annoyed by everyone's laughter. Coupled with the fact that he was unable to push the fat horse off his body, he was furious to the extreme and withdrew a dagger from the air before stabbing it fiercely at Senior White. Fengzhou's gaze went cold when he saw this scene, and then his finger moved slightly before a silver needle shot out with a swish. Hiss! The young master in embroidered clothes cried out in pain and gasped while the dagger fell from his hand. When he saw the trembling silver needle on his wrist, he shouted furiously, Who plotted against me? Everyone couldn't help but whisper when they saw the young master's movement of stabbing the needle had stopped because of his cry of pain, and the dagger in his hand had fallen to the ground. Meanwhile, Fengzhou tapped the tip of his foot on the ground and leaped up into the arena. Everyone saw a dazzling red-colored figure flash before their eyes, and then they saw the red-clothed figure flutter in midair before landing lightly on the ground in the next moment. The monstrous young man with a handsome appearance and noble aura stood in the arena with his hands behind his back. His chin was slightly raised while his clear eyes looked down with a peerlessly noble and breathtaking aura. Who's that? Why did he suddenly go in? This young man is really outstanding. Could it be that he's a disciple of a noble family? He doesn't seem to be a member of our Six Paths City, and I've never seen him before. Right when everyone was discussing this, the members of Dawn Pavilion walked out because of Fengzhou's sudden intrusion, and they were just about to ask about it when the red-clothed young man's voice sounded out from the arena. Old Bai, come here. Fengzhou called out. Lao Bai, who was lying on the ground and pressing down on the man in embroidered clothes, suddenly turned his head. When he saw Fengzhou, he screamed and ran over happily. Everyone had different expressions when they saw this scene. Their gazes landed on the red-clothed youth as they secretly sized him up. From the looks of it, this fat horse belonged to the red-clothed youth? But if it was his, why would it be sold to Dawn Cloud Restaurant? Everyone's gazes looked towards the people from Dawn Cloud Restaurant, wanting to see how they would deal with this matter. Fengzhou patted Lao Bai's head and said, You don't have to rub against me. I'll take you back. This spirit beast belongs to our Clear Sky Restaurant. We can't let young master take it away. A middle-aged man walked over with his hands behind his back. He looked at the red-clothed Fengjiu and said, "That's right. I haven't tamed it yet, so how can I let it go?" The man in embroidered clothes walked over as well, and he stared at Fengjiu with a malicious expression. "It was you who used silver needles to plot against me, right? How audacious of you." Fengjiu glanced at the man and laughed coldly. "Are you sure it wasn't my old bai who tamed you just now?" When they heard this, the people in the surroundings chuckled. The man in embroidered clothes' face flushed red as well, and he shouted sternly at Fengjiu, "How dare you?" Chapter 242. Immerse. The man in embroidered clothes groaned as he lay on the ground. Due to the intense pain from the kick to his abdomen, cold sweat instantly appeared on his forehead. He wanted to stand up, but he was unable to muster the strength to do so for a while. Everyone who saw this scene instantly fell silent, seemingly in disbelief. After all, the man in embroidered clothes was a disciple of the Liu family, and his strength and cultivation could be considered outstanding among his peers. But now, he was actually kicked to the ground by the red-clothed youth. How could they not be astonished? When the middle-aged man saw the red-clothed youth's kick, his eyes flickered, and a trace of astonishment flashed through his eyes. He slightly glanced to the side and sized up the red-clothed youth again. Perhaps it was because the red-clothed youth had sensed his gaze, but the red-clothed youth's eyes were cold as he looked at him. In that instant, he had the illusion that the person standing in front of him wasn't a youth, but a supreme king. The intimidating pressure and sharp aura that shot out from the youth's eyes caused his heart to involuntarily tremble. If he had originally thought that the youth might be a disciple of a noble family, then at this moment, he could conclude that the youth's background was definitely extraordinary. It was precisely because of this thought that his expression softened, and he said, "Young master, why don't we talk at the back?" At the same time, he made a gesture of invitation. However, at this moment, the man in embroidered clothes on the ground stood up with a gloomy expression. "Leave? Where do you think you're going? Do you really think that my Liu family is easy to bully? You want to leave after kicking me? No way." As soon as he finished speaking, his spiritual aura surged, and a wind blade formed in his palm. His body instantly swept towards Fengjiu, and at the same time, the wind blade in his hand also slashed towards her. Fengjiu, who had originally planned to follow the middle-aged man to the side of the exit, felt the sharp sound of the wind blade behind her. When she turned around, she saw the wind blade slashing towards her. Just as she was about to dodge, she saw Lao Bai swinging his ponytail and eagerly following beside her. If she dodged it, then that blade of air would definitely strike Senior White. When she thought up to here, her eyes narrowed while she condensed a strand of air with both hands to block the blade of air that assaulted her. Swish! It flashed by, and then her sleeve that she used to block the blade of air was sliced into pieces, revealing her snow-white wrists. His snow-white skin was so delicate that it could be broken by the wind. Almost in an instant, it caused the breathing of many men outside the arena to become much heavier. All of them stared at the red-clothed youth's devilishly handsome face and thought to themselves, this youth's appearance was so outstanding. If he were a woman, how beautiful would he be? Fengjiu only felt a slight pain on her face. She raised her finger and wiped it gently. Droplets of blood spread between her fingers. Seeing this, the corners of her lips slowly bloomed into an enchanting smile. That smile was like a poppy blooming in the spring breeze. It was too beautiful to behold, but it also revealed a bloodthirsty and dangerous aura. She narrowed her eyes, and a cold, murderous aura spread out from her body in an instant. However, at this moment, the man in embroidered clothes did not seem to notice it. This was because he was also bewitched by the enchanting smile that bloomed on the lips of the person in front of him. Because of this, a hint of infatuation appeared in his eyes, and the anger from before completely disappeared. Chapter 243. The man in embroidered robes exclaimed. His entire body froze because his throat was tightly gripped by the young man in red. The young man's grip was so strong that it seemed as if his neck could be broken with just a little more force. This caused him to be extremely frightened. "Young master, you can't," the middle-aged man exclaimed. If the young master of the Liu clan died here, not only would their Dawn Cloud Pavilion be in trouble, even the young man in red would not be able to bear the wrath of the Liu clan. Hiss. What is he trying to do? Don't tell me he wants to kill the young master of the Liu clan? Impossible. He doesn't have the guts. Kill him? He won't be able to survive. The crowd outside the pavilion discussed. They were shocked by the young man's actions. However, they all felt that he wouldn't dare to kill the young master of the Liu clan. After all, killing a young master of an aristocratic clan in the 6th Dao city was an open challenge to the aristocratic clan. As a mere outsider, he didn't have the guts to do so. Not only did the crowd think so, but even the young master of the Liu clan, whose throat was gripped by Fengjiu, also thought so. After the initial shock, he calmed down and looked at Fengjiu with a provocative gaze. "You want to kill me? Do you dare? Go out and ask around. Who in the 6th Dao city doesn't know about our Liu clan?" Only the middle-aged man from the Dawn Cloud Pavilion knew that the young man in red really wanted to kill. He didn't think that the young man in red wouldn't dare to kill the young master of the Liu clan. After all, young people were often impulsive. Sometimes, they didn't even consider the consequences of their actions. Fengjiu's eyes narrowed. The corner of his lips slightly curved as he slowly said, "The Liu clan? Is it very powerful?" Her hand around the young master's throat gradually tightened. Because her hand was holding his throat up, the young master of the Liu clan couldn't help but stand on his tiptoes to relieve the suffocating feeling. As his face gradually turned purple, he couldn't even speak. Looking at the young man in red before him, a trace of panic and fear suddenly appeared in his heart. She revealed an almost strange and dangerous smile as she watched the young man in embroidered robes whose face was gradually turning purple and whose hands were tightly gripping her hand in an attempt to break free. "The last person who injured my face is already dead. His corpse was probably eaten by wild beasts until there was nothing left. Tell me, how do you want to die?" Seeing this scene, the middle-aged man didn't know what to say because he knew that if he continued to persuade the young master of the Liu clan, the young master in red would kill the young master of the Liu clan even faster. Seeing the situation was not good, he was thinking if he should ask the higher-ups to deal with this matter. Release the young master of SSSS. Several guards were originally standing guard outside, but when they heard that something had happened to their young master, one of them quickly returned to the residence to report, while the other 3 quickly came in to investigate. Sure enough, when he saw his young master being strangled by the red-clothed youth, he immediately leaped over the surrounding iron cages and rushed down. The two doctors. Chapter 244. This young man's looks are quite outstanding. His handsome appearance is rare. The man in red and wearing a devil's snare mask stared at Fengjiu below with a burning gaze. Hearing this, the city lord's eyes flashed and he smiled. "Ghost Doctor, you may not know this, but there is a place for handsome men in Six Path City. The men there are also very outstanding. How can the men in the handsome men's place have this young man's nobility and demonic charm? This young man is the real deal." The ghost doctor's burning gaze fell on Fengjiu's snow-white wrist. His gaze moved up and swept across his beautiful neck. Then, he took in that exquisite yet demonic face. The more he looked, the more restless his heart became. Hearing this, the city lord of Six Path City was secretly speechless. He didn't seem to have heard of the ghost doctor being a homosexual. But from the time he came into contact with the ghost doctor, he found that the ghost doctor was not interested in beauties, but was quite interested in handsome men. But if it was a normal man, then it would be good. After all, what kind of man could the handsome men not have? But when it came to the red-clothed young man below, he was hesitant. Although he wanted to ask for more medicine from the ghost doctor and had to flatter him, as the city lord of Six Path City, he couldn't do things too out of line. Otherwise, the impact would be too great. But, just as he was hesitating, he heard the ghost doctor's voice. "City Lord Chong, if you can help me get this young man, then I won't treat you unfairly." Hearing this, the city lord was startled and looked at the ghost doctor beside him. His words were equivalent to a promise. To him, this was an opportunity. "Okay, I'll think of a way." He nodded in response and saw the ghost doctor beside him looking down in surprise. Seeing this, he turned to look as well. The three guards who leaped into the arena rushed forward, brandishing their swords to attack the red-clothed youth. They wanted to force him to release his hands, but unexpectedly, he turned around and used the young master of the Liu family as a shield, letting the young master of the Liu family take a blow from his own guards. Young master." The guard was shocked and his face turned pale. He was so scared that his whole body trembled. But at this moment, Fangzhou kicked him in the head and he fainted. The other two wanted to step forward, but they did not dare to use their sabers for fear of hurting their young master. However, they were also sent flying by Fangzhou in a few moves. They lay on the ground, howling in grief and unable to stand up. At this time, young Master Lu's face was pale and bloodless. He had been stabbed in the back. Blood gushed out and dyed his robe red. He was in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat. However, his throat was still gripped and he couldn't break free. At this time, Feng Nine stared at the young master of the Liu family, who was trembling in fear. She said in a lazy and bloodthirsty voice, "It's too easy for you to be strangled to death like this. How about we change the method?" What are you trying to do? You should know that if I die, you won't be able to live either." Young Master Lu said with a trembling voice, "How about I let you have a taste of living a life worse than death?" Fengzhou's light laughter was cold. As soon as his voice fell, he suddenly turned his hand and locked onto the young master's hands. He turned his whole body around and twisted his hands behind his back. Wherever her hands touched, there was the sound of bones cracking, accompanied by shrill screams that sounded louder and louder. Chapter 245. Young Master Lu was twisted into a ball on the ground. Nobody knew how he was folded. His arms and legs were twisted backward, and even his neck was twisted to one side. All the bones in his body seemed to have been crushed. Not only that, but the veins in his body seemed to be twitching. His chin was dislocated, and he could not speak. He could only shout and drool. Seeing the previously high-spirited young master of the Liu family become like this, everyone was shocked. Was this red-robed young man going against the Liu family? He dared to crush all the bones in young Master Lu's body and make him look like he was better off dead. If the people of the Liu family saw this, how angry would they be? When the middle-aged man saw this, he could not help but gulp. He was horrified. This red-robed young man's attack was too terrifying. Killing someone was as simple as nodding his head to the ground, but he had crushed all the bones in young Master Lu's body. He had also used some unknown method to twist young Master Lu's body into this state. Although young Master Lu was still alive, his current situation was simply worse than death. All the bones in his body were broken. He probably could not recover. If he could not recover, he would be like a cripple. How cruel was it for a cultivator to become a cripple? "Lao Bai, let's go." Fengzhou patted the dragon horse beside him and was about to leave. However, how could it be so easy for her to leave now? "Sir, I'm afraid you can't leave like this," the middle-aged man said. He glanced at the twitching young Master Lu on the ground and said, "The people of the Liu family are not here yet. If you leave, I'm afraid we can't explain it to them." Hearing this, Fengzhou stopped and glanced at him. He raised his eyebrows. "So, you want to stop me?" Before the middle-aged man could speak, he heard an angry roar coming from outside. That voice contained a powerful pressure that caused the entire area to tremble a few times. "Who dares to hurt a disciple of the Liu family?" A gray-robed old man rushed over as soon as he finished speaking. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the middle of the field. When he saw young Master Lu lying on the ground with his body twisted, he flew into a rage. Pressure and a chilling aura instantly burst out from his body. "Who is it? Who dares to cripple my Liu family?" As he shouted with a grim voice, his sharp and gloomy gaze swept through the surroundings before descending onto the red-clothed young man. Because he recognized the middle-aged man, The middle-aged man was the manager of Dawn Pavilion, so it was naturally impossible for the middle-aged man to injure a member of his Lu clan. Then, only the red-clothed young man remained. Once he locked onto his target, he bent his palm, forming a claw that grabbed a gust of air and suddenly attacked Fangio. The claw was filled with killing intent, causing people to tremble in fear. Fangio, whose back was facing the gray-robed elder, had a cold glint in her eyes. With a slight movement of her hand, a sharp dagger appeared in her palm. A red figure flashed, and the sharp dagger instantly struck out, slashing towards the gray-robed elder. Hiss! With a gasp, the gray-robed old man quickly withdrew his hand and covered the deep cut on his wrist. His gaze on Fangio became increasingly gloomy. Ignorant brat, you dare to make an enemy of my Lu family? I think you're tired of living. Fangio curled her lips into a smile, but the smile did not reach her eyes. Old thing, I think you're the one who's tired of living. As soon as she finished speaking, the red figure rushed forward without warning. Her speed was so fast that the people inside and outside the field widened their eyes in shock. Whoosh! Chapter 246. Bang! The body fell to the ground with a heavy thud. The people outside the arena stood up in shock and looked at the scene in disbelief. Heavens! He killed the Lu clan's third elder. Hiss! It was an instant kill. That Lu clan's third elder was a 4th-level Foundation establishment cultivator. He was killed by a young man in one move? What is the background of this young man? Could it be that his cultivation is stronger than the Lu clan's third elder? This is going to be a big problem. This young man is in big trouble. The commotion caused the entire place to fall into chaos. Everyone was discussing in low voices, and their shocked gazes fell upon the red-clothed young man. They were frightened by his viciousness and boldness, and even more so by his ability to kill a Foundation establishment cultivator in an instant. Foundation establishment cultivators were not like spirit masters or great spirit masters. They were cultivators who had already stepped onto the path of immortality. They were cultivators who had lived for 200 years. They were cultivators who could make countless spirit masters and great spirit masters kneel on the ground in fear with a stomp of their feet. But now, they were killed by a young man in red. Not only were the people in the arena shocked, even City Lord Chong of Six Paths City was shocked by the young man in red's ruthlessness. There was no need to mention the fake ghost doctor who was staring at Fangio with covetous eyes. This young man is definitely not an ordinary person. After the shock, the City Lord sighed and shook his head. He looked at the ghost doctor and said, I'm afraid this young man can't be touched. As the City Lord of Six Paths City, he had seen countless people. He could see that the young man in red's ruthlessness and decisiveness was not something an ordinary family could cultivate. The young man knew that the old man was from the Lu clan and was a Foundation establishment cultivator, but he dared to kill him in an instant. This boldness was definitely not something an ordinary noble child could have. The ghost doctor also saw it. Not to mention the City Lord, he was also shocked by the young man in red's ruthlessness. But the more it was like this, the harder it was to get his hands on the young man. The obsession in his heart grew deeper. Originally, he was only interested in the young man in red because of his handsome appearance and extraordinary temperament. But now, his interest was completely aroused. Fangio in the arena narrowed his eyes and glanced at the old man who was already dead. His gaze swept past young Master Lu, who was twisted on the side. He coldly snorted and swept his eyes around his surroundings. His cold voice was filled with a cold aura. Who else wants to stop this young master from leaving? Why don't you step forward? When that clear and stern voice clearly entered the ears of the surrounding people, each and every one of them looked at him with a complicated expression, but no one dared to stand out and stop him. What a joke. He could even kill a Foundation establishment cultivator in one move. How could they stop him? Wasn't that courting death? The middle-aged man from Dawn Cloud Restaurant looked at Fangio and didn't say anything. This was no longer a matter that Dawn Cloud Restaurant could interfere with. He had crippled the Lu clan's young master and killed the Lu clan's third elder. This news would soon spread to the Lu clan. At that time, Thinking of this, his eyes flashed. How powerful was this young man? What kind of support did he have? He dared to kill the Lu clan's elder just like that? Chapter 247. What they didn't know was that in the Lu clan, an old man was running to the main courtyard with a horrified expression. As he ran, he shouted, "Patriarch! Patriarch! Something bad has happened! Something bad has happened!" The old man's voice resounded in the Lu clan and attracted the attention of everyone in the clan. Everyone in the various courtyards came out to check. In the main courtyard, Patriarch Lu was talking with two elders. When they heard the voice outside, they were slightly surprised. "It seems to be fourth brother's voice," one of the elders said. He glanced at Patriarch Lu and said, "I'll go out and have a look." However, he had just stood up and hadn't walked out of the door when he saw the figure outside rush in. "Patriarch, something bad has happened. Third elder's longevity lamp has gone out." As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of the three people in the room changed drastically. "What? How is that possible?" The three of them exclaimed in unison. Their voices were filled with disbelief and shock. "It really went out. It went out just now. His longevity lamp really went out. Moreover, eldest young master's longevity lamp is flickering. I'm afraid the situation is not good." When Patriarch Lu heard this, he strode out and shouted, "Guards! Guards! Where did third elder and eldest young master go? Does anyone know?" His voice spread in the clan, and a guard hurriedly came to report. "Patriarch, a guard who went out with eldest young master came back and said something happened to eldest young master in Yuyan restaurant. Third elder happened to be in the front courtyard and heard it, so he rushed over." Patriarch Lu's expression changed when he heard this, and he immediately said to the three elders behind him, "I'll go to Yuyan restaurant first. Immediately take people to surround Yuyan restaurant. Don't let the person who killed third elder escape." "Yes," the three elders hurriedly responded. When they saw Patriarch Lu rush out, they quickly gathered people and rushed to Yuyan restaurant. Yuyan restaurant, under everyone's gazes, Fangjiu, who wore dazzling red clothes, came to Senior White's side and patted his head. "Senior White, let's go." This time, everyone could only watch as the red-clothed youth led the reins out of the hall. No one dared to stop him. Even the manager of Dawn Cloud Restaurant could only watch as he left, because he knew that even if he didn't stop this young man, he wouldn't be able to leave. Everyone watched as he led the fat horse out of the field, went outside, and walked out of Dawn Sky Restaurant's door. Everyone followed behind him and watched. He had killed the third elder of the Lu clan and crippled the young master of the Lu clan. Could this young man really leave this place alive? Just as Fangjiu was about to leave with Senior White, a furious roar came from afar, accompanied by a powerful pressure. "Who dares to kill an elder of the Lu family? Get out here!" A monstrous fury accompanied by a fierce and powerful pressure burst out. In an instant, even the air seemed to have solidified. The low and oppressive aura, as well as the deafening roar, caused the people outside Dawn Cloud Restaurant to retreat one after another, fearing that they would be affected if they were not careful. At the same time, when family head Lu arrived, the three elders and nearly 100 guards who followed behind him hurriedly came over. The aggressive team made the peddlers and common people on the street frightened and made way for them. Chapter 248. Almost in an instant, everyone's eyes fell on the red-clothed youth leading the fat horse in front of Yuyan restaurant. At this moment, even though they didn't know him and didn't know who he was, they couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat for him. There were even some people who secretly admired the red-clothed youth's calmness and courage. If it was someone else, they would have been paralyzed with fear upon seeing the Lu family's lineup. "Who killed my Lu family's elder? Get out here!" Family head Lu's malicious and fierce voice rang out again, his sharp and malicious eyes staring at Yuyan restaurant. At this moment, he simply didn't expect that the red-clothed youth leading the fat horse in front of Yuyan restaurant was the person who killed his Lu family's third elder. Therefore, even when he noticed that everyone's eyes were on the red-clothed youth, he didn't think in that direction. After all, the third elder was a foundation establishment cultivator. How could he be killed by a youth who was still wet behind the ears? At this moment, a middle-aged man wearing a brocade robe walked out of Yu Yun Restaurant. He was the owner of Yu Yun Restaurant, Chow Mu. Although Yu Yun Restaurant was only a restaurant, its power was about the same as the power of a medium-sized family in Six Paths City. It was precisely because of this that no one dared to cause trouble here. After all, the power of a medium-sized family was extremely terrifying. Chow Mu walked out and glanced at the red-clothed youth, then cupped his hands towards Family Head Lu. Family Head Lu, I trust you've been well since we last met. Househead Chow, I don't have time to chat with you today. Tell me, who killed my third elder? How is my son? Family Head Lu asked with a gloomy face. His sharp eyes fell on Chow Mu, not allowing him to dodge even half a bit. Young master, please give Family Head Lu an explanation. Chow Mu looked at Fengjiu and said. Family Head Lu's eyes widened in shock. He angrily pointed at the red-clothed youth leading the fat horse. He killed him? Fengjiu glanced at Chow Mu, then looked at the head of the Lu family in front of him. His clear voice was filled with coldness. So what if I killed him? So what if I killed him? So what if I killed him? Everyone felt as if their heads were about to explode. They only felt that this was inconceivable. Was this young man crazy? He dared to say such words in front of Family Head Lu. Was he really not afraid of death? Not only was clan leader Lu in disbelief, but the three elders were also in disbelief. This young man was not even a foundational cultivator. How could he have killed the third elder, who was at the fourth level of the foundational level? However, the expressions of the surrounding people and Chow Mu's words clearly indicated that it was this red-clothed young man who had killed their Lu clan's third elder. Moreover, this young man himself had said that he was the one who killed him. So what? He had already admitted it, but they still found it hard to believe. How did he do it? How could a youth whose spiritual power was only at the level of a great spirit master kill a foundation establishment cultivator? At this moment, young Master Lu, who was twitching and twisting into a ball, was carried out. When Family Head Lu saw his son in such a state, he was unable to restrain his anger. Like an enraged lion, he was furious. At this moment, the powerful pressure and fierce airflow all over his body swept towards the red-clothed young man. Chapter 249. Bang! The surrounding atmosphere became oppressive due to the surging spiritual power in their bodies. Seeing that the young man in red was able to fight with Family Head Lu without being at a disadvantage, the onlookers were secretly shocked. Family Head Lu was a cultivator in the 6th stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. Not to mention the fact that the difference in cultivation level was 1 level. The young man in red was only a great spiritual master. Even at his age, it was rare for him to have such a cultivation level. However, it was simply impossible for the weak to fight against a strong opponent and not lose. Yet, it just so happened that bang. The two people's fists collided. 2 streams of air burst out from their fists, forming a visible flow of spiritual power in front of their fists. Because of the collision of the 2 streams of air, the 2 people were instantly knocked back several steps. Family Head Lu took a few steps back before stabilizing himself. He was secretly shocked. This young man could actually block his attack? Well, if he didn't have some skills, how could he kill the Lu family's third elder? Fengjiu, who took a few steps back, loosened her fist. She rotated her hand that was hurt from the collision and squinted her clear eyes. After this fight, she had a general understanding of Family Head Lu's strength. Although her spiritual power cultivation was not as good as the opponent's, she had the advantage in her body movements and strange moves. It would not be easy for the opponent to kill her, but it was not impossible for her to kill the opponent. Didn't the Foundation Establishment realm old man from before die in her hands? What she needed to consider now was how to escape unscathed after killing Family Head Lu. After all, the power of one person was limited. With her current strength, she could not deal with the whole family taking turns to fight. It seems that I have underestimated you, Family Head Lu said in a gloomy voice. He hadn't taken out his weapon before, but now he took it out. He stretched out his hand, and with a flash of light, a long sword with the shape of a curved willow appeared in his hand. Almost at the same time he showed this long sword, There were gasps of surprise around him. Hiss! That's the Lu clan's heirloom, the willow leaf sword. This is a high-grade spiritual weapon. Using it in battle will increase one's strength by a lot. This Lu family head is too much. After all, the opponent is only a youth. Not only is he older than the youth, his cultivation is also stronger than the youth. Now, he even took out the willow leaf sword. This is clearly bullying. What do you know? That young man killed the Lu clan's third elder and slapped the Lu clan's face. If a clan head like him is defeated by that young man, how can the Lu clan establish itself in the Six-Path City in the future? The surrounding people continued to talk, each with their own opinions. They were all watching the show. After seeing this scene, many people secretly shook their heads. This young man is probably going to die here today. Fengjiu's gaze fell on the willow leaf sword in the hall. The spiritual aura on the sword proved that this sword was not ordinary. However, she knew that if this sword was compared to the Qingfeng sword, it was still far from being comparable. However, the Qingfeng sword was not suitable to be used in this kind of situation. Therefore, she took out a dagger. Ha 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 ha. Ignorant child. You want to fight me with a dagger? Chapter 250. As soon as these words came out, everyone gasped and thought to themselves, this young man is so arrogant. When family head Lu heard this, his face darkened as if he was enraged. A cold aura burst out from his body, and his hand that was holding the willow leaf sword surged with spirit force. The air on the blade whistled out, and the sharp sword energy was like an ice blade, causing some of the people close to him to take a few steps back. I want to see what kind of arrogance a kid like you has got. Before he could finish his sentence, he stopped abruptly. It was as if someone had grabbed him by the throat, and the rest of his words could not come out. His face was so dark and sinister that it was frightening. His eyes were filled with rage as he glared at the damned youth who had attacked him without warning. Because of the young man's sudden attack and fast speed, by the time he reacted, the cold dagger was already close to his throat. At that moment, his heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly had a trace of fear and shock that he shouldn't have. The hand that was holding the sword instinctively raised to block, but he could only block the dagger that was going for his throat. It was too late to block the dagger that was going for his arm. Whoosh! The fierce attack was fast and ruthless. The dagger was so deep that the bone could be seen. Blood splashed out in an instant, accompanied by the sound of him gasping and the exclamations of the surrounding Lu family members. Hiss! Family head. When they saw the blood gushing out of their family head's arm, it quickly dyed his entire sleeve red. His arm was also hanging down due to the injury and was trembling slightly. Blood dripped down from his hand to the ground and bloomed into beautiful red plum blossoms on the ground. I already said that a dagger is enough to deal with you. Fengjiu, who had already retreated, narrowed his eyes and slightly curved his lips. He seemed to be in a good mood as he looked at family head Lu, whose hand was dripping with blood. Just as everyone was shocked by his unconventional actions and ruthlessness, they heard him say something that made people's mouths twitch and the Lu family's teeth clench in anger with a tone of admiration. The blooming blood on the ground is really beautiful, enchanting and bloodthirsty. Family head Lu, don't you agree? She smiled and looked at the gloomy family head Lu. He was glaring at her as if she had done something unforgivable. She couldn't help but curl her lips into a smile. Kill him. Family head Lu gritted his teeth and ordered gloomily. The three elders at the side responded. Just as they were about to make a move, they heard a deep and dignified voice. Wait! Suddenly, someone called out to stop them. Everyone was startled and looked in the direction of the voice in surprise. When they saw it, everyone respectfully called out, City Lord. The surrounding people quickly opened up a path, surprised that the City Lord was actually here. There were even more gazes that landed on the red-robed man beside the City Lord. Many of the people present were the disciples of the city's aristocratic families and some well-informed cultivators. Previously, they had heard that the ghost doctor had come to the Sixth Dao City and was personally received by the City Lord. Now that they saw this red-clothed man wearing a mask, they all guessed, could this person be the ghost doctor? Chapter 251. As for the red-clothed man, his gaze fell on Fengjiu, who was similarly dressed in red. Fengjiu, who was originally looking at Lu family head, felt a burning gaze on her and instinctively looked over. When her gaze landed on the red-clothed man wearing a devil's snare mask, her eyebrows raised slightly. When she saw the man looking at her with a covetous and vulgar gaze, her gaze turned cold. When she first arrived at Six Path City, she heard that there was a ghost doctor here, but she didn't expect to meet him today. From the looks of it, he seemed to be a lecher. Moreover, he was gay. Her gaze turned and fell on the city lord, sizing him up without batting an eyelid. The city lord of Six Path City was said to have advanced not long ago. He broke through the threshold that he hadn't broken through for a long time and became a foundation establishment cultivator. He was only one step away from becoming a golden core cultivator. When Lu family head, who was originally furious and gloomy, saw the city lord and the red-clothed man wearing a mask, his eyes lit up with joy and he asked, "City lord, could this be the ghost doctor who has recently become famous?" "That's right, it's the ghost doctor." City Lord Chang nodded and glanced at the person beside him. As soon as his words came out, the surrounding people immediately became excited. "Ghost doctor? It's really the ghost doctor?" It's said that the ghost doctor's whereabouts are elusive. I didn't expect him to come to our Six Path City. That's right. I heard that the ghost doctor's medicine is close to a divine medicine. It's effective immediately. If I can ask him for a bottle of medicine to advance, I won't hesitate to spend a sky-high price. That's right. I heard that the city lord broke through to foundation establishment after taking the ghost doctor's medicine. He's only one step away from golden core cultivation. If possible, I also want to ask the ghost doctor for medicine. I can spend as much money as I want. Just think about it. Even my family couldn't bid for it. Do you think you can get a bottle? That's impossible. Do you know how many connections the city lord used to get that bottle of medicine? The ghost doctor's medicine can't be bought even if you have money. The moment they saw the ghost doctor appear, the surrounding aristocratic children all started to quarrel. Some of them quickly sent people back to their families to report, telling their family patriarchs that the ghost doctor was in front of Dawn Cloud Restaurant. The red-clothed man couldn't help but reveal a smile when he saw the crowd's respectful and excited gazes landing on him. He raised his chin slightly, and his gaze was filled with a sense of superiority. He enjoyed the admiration of the crowd at this moment. Seeing this, Fengjiu glanced at the red-clothed man and sneered disapprovingly. A fake ghost doctor still had the nerve to be so smug and self-satisfied? It was simply ridiculous. However, her disapproving sneer aroused the dissatisfaction of the surrounding people, especially the Lu family head who was eager to show goodwill to the ghost doctor. He glared at Fengjiu and shouted harshly, "In front of the city lord and the ghost doctor, an arrogant brat like you actually dares to be impudent? Someone come. Kill him on the spot." "Clan leader Lu, please wait," said the city lord, stopping them. "City lord, what is the meaning of this?" Clan leader Lu's face darkened. He thought that the city lord wanted to protect the red-clothed youth, so even his tone became gloomy. At this moment, the red-clothed man wearing the mask walked forward and stopped in front of Fengjiu. Staring at that handsome face, he couldn't hide the desire and excitement in his eyes. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.